If it's Sunday after an AEW pay-per-view, it is Wrestling Night in America. I am your host, Brandon LeClair, getting started a little late here on a Sunday after AEW Forbidden Door. My apologies for that. Took a very brief break during the show for a personal matter, and of course that snowballs, and you can't really catch up. And then suddenly you're getting done the show 15 to 20 minutes late. But we are here now. And we are here to talk about the 2025 iteration of AEW Forbidden Door. The show was live. It got done just a short time ago from the O2 Arena in London. Of course, this replacing the typical show on AEW's calendar in London, where they typically visit for All In. That, of course, this year was All In Texas, and London gets Forbidden Door this year instead. So we are going to run down the whole card, as we often do, or always do, here on these AEW pay-per-view post shows, this iteration of Wrestling Night in America. And to do that with me is PWTorch contributor Brian Zilem. Brian, glad to have you. Looking forward to talking this one.
Yes, this is our first time to collaborate, Brendan. I think it is, right?
Yeah, it is. It is the first time. So looking forward to it. And certainly a newsworthy show.
Oh, yes, for sure. It's always a different experience for these midday shows, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I timestamped. I didn't know if we were going to talk about 0 Hour, but I think I had my first match timestamped around 10:53 Central Standard Time for 0 Hour. And okay. I think the show wrapped up around, I think I want to say close to 4:20 Central Time, I think.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah, I was probably I between two very brief breaks, I wound up about probably 20 minutes behind, and I think I gained maybe 6 or so of those minutes back. Of course, unlike WWE PLEs, it's very hard to catch up on an AEW pay-per-view once you've fallen behind, because the action is fast and furious.
Yes.
But we're here now. Brian, if you want to give a quick overview, your thoughts on 0 Hour. I did not catch the show.
Okay.
So if you want to just go ahead, brief thoughts on that, and then we can launch into the main card.
Yeah, for sure. I was kind of anticipating them to add more matches. I think as of pre-Collision, there was 2 matches. And then after Collision, we had a total of 4 on there. Pretty fun. I will say, for anybody have you seen the Michael Oku pounce? Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'll get there briefly. Okay, so first match of the card. It's actually Paragon with Uemura El Desperado versus Don Callis family and the Crew, which was Hitachiro and Josh Alexander. Very fun. There was obviously moments where Leo Rush has these, matrix like, movement. Match was about 12 minutes. Yua actually won with the butterfly suplex, and then actually hit another suplex, the deadbolt suplex on Rush for the pin. Went 12 minutes, just paced really well. The second match was actually Ricochet in the Gates of Agony versus Jet Speed and Michael Okua. So Oku was actually about to do a dive, and out of nowhere, Toa Leona basically pounced Okua to another dimension. It was, I know, like the Michael Cole pounce with Keith Lee is up there because he does it in the stands, but just like the way it's framed and the ferocity of the pounce, because the bump Oku does, it's incredible, because it looks like he legit died. It was quite astounding. I know like pre-show stuff is kind of like, I would go out of your way. I think this might have been my favorite spot of the entire card, to be quite honest. So that was very fun. Jet Speed is always like fun because it was that was who they were teamed with. Ricochet actually won. They actually pinned Michael Okua 8 minutes. Not fussy at all. Triangle of Madness and Megan Bain versus Queen Amanada, Harley Cameron, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander. Willow Nightingale will always get the Legion of Doom pop especially in the UK. Match went 11 minutes. I would say my main highlight of that is Megan Bayne is a star, and she needs to be a champion of some kind by the end of the year, because she just I don't know where you are with Megan Bayne, Brandon. I think she's a megastar. I think she gets better every time she's in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen the improvement there. When she had the title match on pay-per-view a while back, I thought it was pretty evident that there was something there, but she wasn't quite ready for that next step yet. But things have certainly improved. I'm interested to see, where they can get with her next. And AEW, for all of the for all the criticism that they get for the women's division, or used to get for the women's division, they've really turned that thing around in the last year or so. And Toni Storm's sort of record-setting run has been a really big piece of that, as well as just featuring Mercedes Moné as your big centerpiece star, which I think has been a good move. And I was worried in the beginning with Moné. I didn't think that the presentation was great, but it's gotten drastically better. And I'm glad they've got people like Bayne coming up the ranks and have an opportunity to build another homegrown star.
Yeah, and especially with AEW not having obviously house shows, there's like obviously limitations on when they can work. And Bayne, to me, has always seen somebody who she seems like she wants to absorb knowledge from people in the back, because I think I've even mentioned this on shows with Wade before, because when she used to do the her F5, she didn't used to do it at first, but I think somebody talked to her and said, hey, when you do the F5, you should get on one knee and do a hair flip. And just like little things like that, it just shows me like, I'm just like, okay, you're real. Somebody's really talking to you, and you're willing to like listen. And she's not like, for somebody as a bigger component when she sells, it's not clunky or cringy either. And that's what and like you said, each time she's in there, she's better. Obviously, like, I think she has everything. You probably want to see a little bit more depth in character, maybe a little mic time eventually, but I think she has everything else. But yeah, thank you for giving me some Megan Bayne talk. She's like one of my favorites right now, especially on Collision. And just real quick, like how you mentioned on the women's side, I don't have like the stats, but I'm fairly certain Megan Bayne's been either featured or she's had a match every single week since the Toni Storm match. So that, if that says anything about like how AEW's kind of improved, like their presentation of the women's division, for sure.
It's not a terrible idea too, to kind of have her making those improvements on the side on Collision on your lesser watch show, because then when you do introduce her to your larger audience on Dynamite, she's kind of gone through that transformation, and people are they're likely to be, for those that aren't diehards following Collision, they're likely to be a little bit more surprised and interested in what they're seeing from the second iteration. So that's strong. It's a strong booking philosophy for sure.
Absolutely. And fourth and final match of the 0 hour, it was the Trios Championship match, with which last night I kind of figured after there was like a promo that they played in Collision. So it was the Ops versus the Bullet Club War Dogs. It went exactly 9 minutes, 59 seconds, or 10 minutes, depending on how you clocked it. Joe was very over. Match went pretty fast because they knew obviously the card was about to start. But, I think it was kind of almost like a nostalgia show for Joe. Joe got the Muster Buster for the win, and they got in and out. But very, I would say very G1 formulaic kind of layout for just like the pre-show and like the card itself, but we'll get more in the meat here briefly. But yeah, that was the pre-show, but it wasn't like, I didn't feel bored watching the pre-show. I'll say that much, because usually you watch the AEW because like it's all the same, and I felt like at least they were just like, okay, let's like get in, get out, like let's add a little, like not everything needs to be 15 minutes, which I appreciate.
Yeah, Chris's error in the chat just saying forgot that there was a trios title in AEW, which I think is part and parcel for kind of how those titles have been treated in recent months. It's not really a surprise that they are relegated to the pre-show at this point, and I think it's going to be, even with the Ops holding them, who I think is a good pairing, a good team overall, a stable that has found its footing and is relatively over with the crowd. I think it's still a challenge to make people care about those titles. titles, because AEW has just told you essentially since their inception that they just really don't matter. So it's a tough sell. But let's go ahead and pivot to the main card here. We'll start with the main event since it's freshest on our minds.
Okay.
Or I guess not technically the main event because it was lights out. Main event is the world title match, but the closing match on the show, the lights out steel cage match. This a big prolific brawl, as they typically are. Just running through the particulars here for those that are just joining us or who didn't see the show live. This was a multi-person steel cage match. It is a Darby Allin, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, and Will Ospreay defeating the Young Bucks, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, and the Death Riders, which is comprised of Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Gabe Kidd. Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir were at ringside, but not in the match itself. This was, of course, the lights out steel cage match. So the good guys win this one in just over 32 minutes or just about 32 and a half minutes. A lot going on here, as to be expected in this type of steel cage match. The cage, for those who didn't see the show and were wondering how they were going to put this thing together, the steel cage, the way that I find best to describe it, is sort of a Hell in a Cell structure that was a little bit wider and a little bit shorter. So it was the height of a steel cage, but spread out the way that Hell in a Cell is, to accommodate all the wrestlers in the match. So plenty of free moving in between the apron and the cage wall. And they were able to climb the cage with no top and without excessively tall walls. So this one goes, like I said, a little over 30 minutes. It's an interesting feat for sure. You have a match that to me was styled very similarly to the matches that we tend to see each year, like Anarchy in the Arena, that type of thing. It had its moments. Let's put it this way. I have come to not loathe, but sort of come into these matches with bated breath, knowing that AEW is likely to push the limit of what I am comfortable with in a pro wrestling setting. And it's less so that they do it and more so the frequency with which they do it. I think that we just saw a violent affair akin to this back in May, as we often do every year. And considering that also involved this iteration of Jon Moxley and his crew, it felt a little less novel this time around. It felt like they were going back to the well and needed to either force themselves into repeating a number of spots or upping the ante on the violence. And they largely chose the latter in this instance. I think there was, some stuff that we've come to expect in these types of matches, but they also dialed the violence meter up to 11 on a couple of occasions. I mean, looking specifically at the fork spot with Darby Allin's ear. I want to get your thoughts, first of all, on sort of the level of violence in this thing, and then we'll kind of dive into the actual meat of the match and kind of where this sets things up to go from here.
Well, it's interesting, Brandon, because I actually liked kind of what you were going with, because you had referenced actually Double or Nothing in May for the Anarchy in the Arena. When you were going that route, I thought you were going to actually reference the previous month, because we just had an iteration of probably the most violent match that the company could do in theory for the Texas Death Match.
That's
so
right.
I thought, I thought you were going to reference that, because
there's just so much that.
Right, well, yeah, because like the Anarchy in the Arena is almost kind of just fun plunder, and that's all. Sure. That's and considering, I was obviously there live, and obviously I'm going to always remember that, especially when you hear "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor." Cause that was, if you can't have fun during that, even if that's not your jam per se, cause like, I'm even trying to look back to the violence. And to me, I thought that match was kind of brought levels down, because I guess they knew ahead of time, hey, we've got All In, so we gotta, let's save some of the real good spots for that. And I completely understand if this, obviously Wade's pretty adamant that this isn't usually his jam. I know, like, obviously, like the prominent figures of the space, like Dave Meltzer, this is not usually his jam either. And if this is not, I completely understand. I don't want to say I'm like numb to it, but a lot of it doesn't really bother me. Obviously, like the ear spot with Darby, that kind of made me squeamish, just because that makes me think of the Jeff Hardy Randy Orton spot, like with the earlobe, and that just makes me kind of tense a little bit. And this was tough too, because we'll get in kind of like maybe a broader discussion as we kind of run down the card. It's clear that AEW is trying to transition to something, and this was almost kind of like not a tribute match per se, but it kind of was, because they know this is Tanahashi's last time in the UK. Kenny Omega I'm really concerned on what Kenny Omega is doing and looking like right now. He looks like he needs some time. Ibushi looked fine. I didn't think Ibushi looked too out of place, but and they did this special thing. Was this all just to kind of accommodate everybody about to go away for a very long time? Probably, yeah, kind of, and so that's the way I'm kind of like that's how I'm evaluating it, Brandon. I'm just like, did this kind of do what it needed to do? Did it really need it? Like, if you're asking me, Brian, would you have booked this match? Probably not, but do you understand the purpose, and did it like accomplish what it meant to do to like exist? I think it did. Like, you got Tanahashi got the pin. The Bucks. The Bucks were like so like cheesing to get the pinfall for Tanahashi. I thought they protected him well. Darby did crazy Darby stuff, which you kind of like expect. Gabe Kidd, I thought, actually looked pretty menacing coming out of the match. But and I honestly was quite touched by the little tribute that Alex Windsor did for Will. I thought that was very lovely, and it kind of like it was lovely and kind of ominous, and it's just like, man, you're about to go away for a really long time, aren't you? And that's kind of sad. And it just and we'll kind of expand on this kind of like weird transition AEW is after like. It's weird. Like, this company just it'll have moments, but then it's like it's just like this roller coaster where we can't just have a consistency, like where something always has to happen, and then you have this influx of you have these huge stars about to be gone for long periods of time. And as far as the violence, again, if this wasn't your jam, I thought actually the Bucks silliness of I thought actually balanced out the match really well for if this wasn't really your jam. The candy corn spot, really cute. The Bucks coming out to Hanson, I really enjoyed that, because for those who are not familiar, the Bucks came out, and that was their indie that was their indie music when they first started, so that's why they came through that. But yeah, those were kind of just my broad thoughts.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, and I think that's why it's good that we're starting with this just so that it's fresh. I'm glad that you brought up the death match, because I mean, really, I think number one, it speaks to a couple things. One, I'm sort of desensitized to how often AEW is doing this sort of thing, this type of main event, and I think that's why I don't think that it is good to become desensitized to hyperviolence in pro wrestling, because I think it should be a rare enough occurrence that when it does happen, and when it is used in an appropriate way to tell a specific story, it should really make you feel something. It shouldn't be akin to a random gore fest in any slasher movie of the last 30 years, where you just become completely desensitized to the death and the gore and the violence because it's just everywhere. And that's sort of the premise of the movie. I am someone who is not made, squeamish or uncomfortable by a lot of blood or anything like that. And this wasn't, aside from the ear spot, which I think, was very clearly meant to evoke that reaction, and did for many people. And there are several in the chat saying the same thing. I don't think that they commit this violence with the intent of really making people squeamish or uncomfortable, but they also aren't able to get to that level because of the regularity that they use it. And I would just like to see that pulled back so that when there is carnage, it's effective carnage. And we talk about how for a while there, Jon Moxley was just bleeding profusely in every single match. And that wasn't effective. Like that didn't help anybody. And he's pulled back on that, thankfully, but he's still bleeding a lot. I think, there was a good point in the chat here by Derek Mitchell I want to bring up. This was supposed to be a blood feud between Darby and the Death Riders. And we've seen sort of the return of Darby Allin getting involved in this angle, and he coming out first tonight. It sort of felt like he was leading the charge, despite Kenny and Ospreay both being bigger stars. But Will Ospreay definitely sort of took over the show here, whether that was intentional or not. Granted, I think he and Ian Omega are the two biggest stars in the match, but this became a story about Ospreay's injury and his impending departure from the company for what we assume will be a significant period of time. And I think that coming out of this thing, watching the Death Riders sort of put down Ospreay, for lack of a better term, I was left feeling a little deflated by the close of this show, because it got me thinking about how for the last year or so I've been so excited about the notion of Will Ospreay taking that mantle and becoming the star of this company. I mean, I talked for many iterations of this show during Ospreay's early run that I thought that AEW should be firmly in the Will Ospreay business, that they should build around this guy, that he had proved himself as a company leading star, and they never quite pulled that trigger. And I thought that they were building to it. And just when it seemed like they might be starting to get there, the plans are derailed, and suddenly you're looking at 12, 18, who knows how many months on the shelf. And to add to that, you think, okay, well, we're not going to have Will Ospreay available to us for a while. So who's next in line behind that? I think that answer is Swerve Strickland. And many would think that Swerve kind of got knocked down a peg because of the arrival of Will Ospreay. And suddenly you had, granted, on a much smaller scale, a Rock Austin situation where you had these two guys competing for the forefront of the babyface spot in the company. And it seemed like, the spot was only big enough for one of them. So you think, okay, Swerve is probably a guy that can stand to benefit from an extended absence of Will Ospreay, but it looks like he may need some time as well. And so suddenly you're looking at a company that is without its two most prominent top baby faces, and a company who may, in this situation, choose to turn to somebody like Kenny Omega. But as you very smartly pointed out at the start of this conversation, he doesn't look like he's right either.
No.
So suddenly you're in a situation where there is a significant void at the top of the card. And you start to wonder very quickly how they fill that hole. What comes to mind for you initially?
Well, it's interesting because I think I look at this as a challenge. I like it, kind of a competitive challenge for the locker room, really, and then maybe even Tony Khan to a degree, because I want to champion someone like Kyle Fletcher, because I don't know where you're at with Kyle Fletcher, but he has been a guy I've had so much stock on Kyle Fletcher, especially those early days when he was Ring of Honor TV champion, and especially when they started showcasing him against like Omega and Danielson on Collision, and I started to see, and I saw, I think there's something there, and you see they pushed him, and he really, really put in the work. And it was so cool to have a chance to kind of talk to him all in. And I got to talk to him a little bit. And we were talking about like, kind of like in sports, how develop, like, especially like if you're like a minor league prospect in baseball, developmental is not always linear. So, what that means is like, you don't really know like how long it's going to take for someone to pop up. Like, it sometimes it just takes some time. And obviously like the Fletcher kind of rise, I would say, about a year and a half or so. And he's definitely turned into a guy where you almost have to put him on every show now, every pay-per-view. You have to kind of establish where Kyle Fletcher is. So so this has obviously created a huge gap kind of like on the babyface side now. So you have Hangman Page, and obviously you have the continued feud with MJF. I feel ... that they're trying to build things with Mark Briscoe. I feel like he could be a guy. You have Darby Allin, who is Teflon. Hopefully at some point, maybe at the end of the year, you've got a guy like Eddie Kingston, so you have like you have different tiers, right? So you have almost kind of like this Mick Foley Mankind level, where I would almost put like Briscoe, Kingston, where you could just give them like a weak title reign and it wouldn't even affect them. Everybody would just be so happy for them. I don't think it would change the business effectively, right? And then you have Darby. I think everybody would love a long Darby reign at some point, but I'm almost looking at it. I'm asking forefront the locker room, like, of these young talented people, do you want this? Like I'm looking at you, like I have a lot of Kevin Knight stock. I love like I think there's a lot of potential with Kevin Knight. So I'm hoping Kevin Knight is the guy who gets opportunities. I'm actually a big Speedball guy. Like he's turned me around. I was kind of like lukewarm on Mike Speedball. Do I think he's like a world champion face of the company? No, but I think he could be a prominent fixture kind of like in that top level where he can kind of fill a void for people, because people obviously like him. I think he's extremely underrated and talented, quite frankly. And you've got even a position where, are we asking, should we just fill this time with more men, or counter, should we just actually fill this time with like more women? Women have been carrying like North American wrestling, I would say, pretty strongly all year from like the two major companies. Is that a reason? Is that like a way you just had, Jamie, we'll talk more once we get there, but you had Jamie Hayter return tonight. That's like one of your huge stars. You've got Tony Storm and Mercedes Moné carrying the company as far as your women's division. So is that a way to allocate the void potentially? I don't know. I mean, it could potentially if, they decide to promote these tag team titles for women. I mean, you've got Willow, you've got Stat, you have these big time players. So that's definitely a void that you can look into. But if you're asking, well, Brian, circle back to my original question, because I know I'll go off in tangents. Like if you're looking at men's side specifically, you have Kevin Knight, you have Briscoe, Darby, Kingston when he's back. Hangman, of course, is your number one. I mean, it's so unfortunate that, guys like Jay White are out for that's another one. Sure, like Jay White is another brutal one. Because obviously Tony is really fond of Jay White. He's not shy about that. And then you have Orange Cassidy. That's another one. Now, let's try to timetable these injuries specifically. So from my understanding, Cassidy has a torn pec. A torn pec, if the Google machine is accurate on this, and with AI, who knows? I think a torn pec can be anywhere from, I've seen anywhere from 4 months to a year for a torn pec. Sure. Ask Cody Rhodes. I can't remember how fast Cody Rhodes came back. Jay White's injury. Yeah, we don't know what Jay White's injury is exactly. Kingston's coming back from an ACL and a broken leg. Swerve is going to have to go away from a torn meniscus that he's been working with since 2019. So
right.
Not as long. So, but let's let him heal up proper. But a torn meniscus, I believe, is anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. And like you had said, Ospreay, 12 to 18 ? Like, who knows? And then with this kind of development, that makes more sense why they went Hangman for Double or Nothing, because they must have saw this coming potentially, or knew this was kind of in the forefront of, oh, well, this is not good, my friend. We might have to actually like put you on the back burner and get you set up health-wise for everything moving forward. So that if you take a step back, that makes so much more sense now why they chose Hangman. And obviously Hangman was the guy anyway, but there's options. So they have a lot of different depth options. So they're not totally like, oh my God, like what are we going to do kind of thing. But I think I'm hopeful this is an opportunity where people are maybe given opportunities and they'll step up.
I think that my preference in this scenario is one that you mentioned early on, and one that Azan in the chat mentioned as well. I'd like to see the women's division take a significant step here and maybe move into the forefront while they're a little lighter on top end baby faces outside of Hangman Adam Page, because with how much improvement we've seen from the AEW women's division over the course of the last year or so, I think it's borderline criminal that they haven't main evented a pay-per-view yet. And I think that, in hindsight, there is a plausible reason that they didn't go with Tony and Mariah May back at, was it Revolution?
God, don't. That's criminal. It was Revolution. That was the Cope Christian cash-in debacle. Borderline. Does that like it's diabolical? That match did not main event, and it only went 15 minutes, which is amazing.
Right. And I get that there was probably some hesitancy there because I think they had a pretty strong inclining at that point that Mariah May was on her way out. But to me, I think that the rivalry that those two women built, the work that they did for the women's division and the company as a whole, would have been worth prominently featuring a talent on their way out the door in spite of that, because the work they did was so good. The work that Mariah May had done to get where she was so good. The match meant so much. It was very clearly the most well-built match and feud on the card by a significant margin. And in hindsight, the main event situation, as you pointed out on that show, wasn't particularly good. So I think that's a much better received show overall if you have the main event. But getting back to the present, I think that's something you want to fight for, especially with Toni Storm in the position that she's in, with Mone in the situation that she's in. Those two feel destined for another crash course here at some point. And I think when you finally pull the trigger on that, they really need to main event that pay-per-view, whatever it is. So one thing I want to touch on here, Brian, before we move on from this, which to me was maybe the most egregious sort of reality breaking moment on a show that I thought unfortunately had several of those little pet peeve, like,
I think I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah. Like this doesn't feel real kind of thing. They did that several times tonight, but to me, none was more egregious than the post-match angle where Will Ospreay is getting viciously attacked in the ring by Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli, and the baby faces are on the outside of the cage just watching. And granted, Marina Shafir is there with a kendo stick, but there are 4 main event level baby faces who are being held off and scared off by Marina Shafir with a kendo stick. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. They should have broken into that cage. They could have torn the door off. I don't care how you accomplish it, but that situation was too heavily telegraphed, and it made the baby faces look weak, and it made the baby faces look stupid.
The only thing I will say in canon to try to defend the baby faces. So you have Tanahashi, who can't even move. So he technically couldn't do anything. So Darby was dead. Kenny can barely move. Ibushi should have done something because Ibushi's certainly shown he could have done that. But then you had, like you said, you had the ops come out, and
and they're fresh.
Yeah, obviously, if anybody from that group could climb a cage, you've got Will Hobbs, who could have easily torn a door down. Now, obviously, if there's no roof, maybe kind of you could try to it doesn't really make that much sense, but okay, fine. But yeah, like Marina just having everybody just chewing them off with the kendo stick was kind of really, really dumb.
If you really want to ensure that they aren't able to stop the beatdown, right? At least have a couple of them climb and get, cracked in the hand with the kendo stick. Shafir can just reach up and over, crack him in the hand. You have to show that there is some level of resistance, and there wasn't any. They just treated Shafir as though she was this impenetrable force with a kendo stick for virtually no reason. If they had at least shown some opposition, then I can excuse it. But the way that they just stood back seemingly willingly and let it happen, to me, it's one of those scene breaking moments that pull you out of what's going on.
Yeah. And things like this, it just opens up for silliness, because then if you want to bring the invisible camera stuff, you could say, well, why didn't they try to show how the ops were trapped in their locker room? And it's well, that's invisible camera stuff. Do we have to kind of go to that? And that just is the whole, and then it asks, okay, why isn't anybody watching the show? I was almost kind of asking, where's Hangman? Where's and they kind of brought it into official canon now, not that it's a secret, but obviously Alex Windsor and Will Ospreay are engaged. Where was Alex Windsor? To me, I can actually kind of forgive the Alex Windsor part if she's fired up and demanding a match with Marina Shafir on Wednesday. Now then I will excuse her part, but those were two questions I had. And then I was trying to go back and forth. Would it have just been now? I believe this was the first time they did kind of the WWE trademark thing where they kind of showed the logo about to go off the air. But I thought, okay, there's some heat coming. Now, did I think necessarily it was going to go towards the Death Riders? Not necessarily. And I'm trying to think, would you have rather just have them just gone off the air with a happy ending? Or would you have maybe rather transferred that heat to somebody that could have used it actually?
I think that I go with the notion of just going with the happy ending. I mean, and the reason for that is that, to me, the match wound up feeling a bit like a throwaway. And I say that because, like we talked about, right? This was really a blood feud between Darby Allin and the Death Riders. And Darby was largely taken out of the finishing sequence. So suddenly you have wrestlers who are peripherally involved in this angle, but not necessarily directly involved. You're now starting to tell the story less so about Darby getting his revenge on Moxley and the Death Riders, and more about Will Ospreay's last stand before heading off to surgery. And then you give Tanahashi the pin. And I completely understand going in that direction. It's his final appearance in the UK. No issue with it whatsoever, other than the fact that it kind of tells the story that, hey, this didn't really mean a whole lot. This wasn't a conclusion to an epic drawn out feud. This was a small step in a larger story that we're telling. And so it was okay for the guy who didn't even appear in the lead up to this thing, was just announced as a participant, is the one to get the pinfall, because it's a happy, feel good moment. At that point, at the moment that you tell the audience that that's what's going on here, I think that you just be real with your audience. They're aware that Ospreay is out the door for the next 12 to 18 months, whatever it's going to be, and you just send them home happy. Instead, you go with this injury angle that is covering up something that the crowd is already fully aware of.
Yeah.
That I think is my biggest issue here.
Kind of just typical wrestling, couldn't help itself.
Yeah.
Which it's funny because AEW has broken the kind of, I guess, the general nuance that we have, that everything you can't have a happy ending. They've shown that they can do that more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, just be transparent. Like, even if, like, give Will Ospreay a speech to say goodbye, because I mean, God forbid, we just don't know, because I was there at Forbidden, or at All In, when Adam Cole did his speech, and Brandon, you could hear a pin drop in that stadium. It was the saddest thing I've ever seen live, and because now let's look at that. The AEW did something I can't recall a wrestling company ever giving somebody time on a pay-per-view, no less, just to go out and kind of like give a speech. So you easily did that your last cycle. So I don't understand why you can't just ultimately the heat transfer doesn't matter with the Moxley. He's already the ace. He's the ace heel of the company anyway. And like you said, you could have just had good vibes, and everybody could have said, you know what, that was fun. That was fine. But then we have like, you open up all these questions where it's just like, did you have to do that? Because if Windsor would have came out and they would have had a nice chat or something, like just cut all the other crap, get everybody out, and give him 5 minutes on the mic or something like that, and just call it a day.
And you're not applying the heat to Moxley and the Death Riders, because the injury is already public knowledge. It's known. And it's already known that, Ospreay was very vocal throughout the week. We've had other reporters chime in and say, hey, the situation can't be exacerbated. It is what it is. That's why he's able to work this final match, and then he can go off and get it taken care of. They already had that information out there publicly. People knew that this was the last time they were going to see Ospreay for a while. So the post-match angle and violent beatdown feels unnecessary. It feels like fodder to almost back yourselves into a corner when Ospreay eventually returns. I mean, Ospreay is going to be gone for so long at this point. Who's to say Moxley's not a babyface by the time he's back? And if that's the case, you have to reckon with this violent attack where Moxley and company tried to end this man's career that was already on the hook, already on the line, essentially. It just felt unnecessary. They didn't need it. They didn't need an angle to write him off. He was already written off. It just felt extra for the sake of it.
Yeah, and it doesn't even transfer any additional heat for the match that Darby and Mox are potentially going to do it all out either. It just this card in itself kind of, I feel like for me it overachieved my expectations, but a lot of the carryover still kind of felt like WrestleMania Backlash Fallout that was going to carry over to All Out. And like you said, just the heat that they had on Will is not going to really escalate anything. I mean, Darby and Moxley have tried to commit murder to each other a couple of times. So like, what else can you really do?
A lot of attempted murder in AEW.
Yes, so much.
A good thing.
So much. Now I'm glad at least like the crime spree of the Death Riders have like, I feel like we're not doing like the wrestling crime meter like Simon Miller does every week. You
mean you don't miss guys getting choked out with bags every week?
When John was posing as a cat burger. I did a post show with Wade a while back, Brandon. I think it was in February, where I said the only thing at this point separating John Moxley and Dick Dastardly is just tying somebody to railroad tracks. That's what, because he was just a cartoon villain. So now I will say now it's night and day. They're not even the same people, thank God. So because I love John Moxley, but yeah, I like you said, we should have just gone off with the happy ending, and I think that would have, maybe enlightened everybody's mood, kind of like on the main event. I don't know if on the show as a whole, but like it would have like definitely changed maybe like the grading of the show for everybody, I think.
Yeah. I think Derek's comment that I had on the screen here for a while, Derek Mitchell in the chat, a really good one. He said it was overkill with the patient dead on the operating table, and that is sort of how it felt. I mean, we all know that Ospreay is going to be out long term. It's highly publicized. We're all aware of it, and you just kind of go and beat the dead horse, and it just felt a little unnecessary, a little overkill, and I don't think that it benefits anybody in the long run. But all right, Brian, we're gonna march through the rest of the card here. Before we do that, though, what I'm gonna do is bring VIP member and frequent caller of the show, Sean, on to give us his thoughts and kind of lead the conversation a bit, and then you and I can continue on and march through this thing. Okay. Sean, glad to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean.
What is going on, guys? Always fun to be on here with you. I guess the one good thing I'll say about what you guys have already said is I am glad Tanahashi got the pin. I did like that. That was a cool thing for him. They didn't have him doing it. I was worried they were going to have him when he started getting on the ladder. I was so worried. I was so like they're going to actually do something with him, you know. But they didn't. They were funny, like trying to get him down. So that was cool.
The guy with the broken neck said, "Hey, no, pops, I got it. I'll kill myself. Don't worry."
Which kudos to those guys, because we've seen some matches in AEW where the wrestlers are just sort of begetting, they're just sort of egging on additional violence and stupidity. So I mean,
the dive itself was probably the safest dive with a guy with a broken neck I've ever seen in my life. Because I understand, like, people may not like the Young Bucks as far as their work, but they are very, very good at catching people on dives. Just because, like, you could like go back and watch it. There was no worries at all because everybody was aligned, because you see so many things in wrestling now where people are just afraid, like they just don't know how to catch anybody on a dive. It's a bad, I don't know if this is a teaching thing across schools that they're not, like, people are not taking in now, but I get so worried now when people go for dives because nobody knows how to do it anymore.
I still dislike the prevalence of that spot. And this isn't an AEW criticism. This extends to WWE and several other promotions as well. Just with the frequency that they do these spots, I hate the setup because it's so glaringly obvious that you have a
very contrived. It takes ages.
Yeah, you have the group of wrestlers who are just, they're all conforming in a very specific area, and they're sort of stood with arms around each other, looking up, knowing what's coming. It takes so long to set up, and it's so blatantly obvious that it's coming from a mile away. It just isn't natural at all.
So Brian, Brian and I got to talk on one of the collision. Brian, was it one of the Thursday collisions? I think you, Josh, and I got on.
That was a fun show. Yeah,
I enjoyed that. So my overall thought of going into this show, real quick before I talk about what I wanted to bring up, was I just think the card on paper, like we said, looked really good. It's like, okay, the card's really good on paper. The matches are going to be really good. To me, the main problem I had with the show, and it played out, was there was no intrigue in any of the matches. There was no intrigue for me. I knew pretty much every match what was going to happen, and that bums me out because I want to have, other than maybe Hangman and Jeff, maybe you could turn yourself into, okay, maybe they'll have MJ. And I didn't think they would, but I thought, okay, maybe there's a possibility until this stupid angle Wednesday. You just know the build to me still lacks a lot of stuff going into these matches, where I just think the build could be so much better to tell a story going into these where there's intrigue, you're behind one guy, you're not behind the other. And I just think they could do a lot more of that, but they just have a show on Collision where they just have these matches where they just don't mean a lot. Yes, they're good matches. They're fun. You're into them. The crowd can get into them.
Mhm.
But I want more intrigue, and so that hurt me going into the matches.
And
One thing I
Sean,
wanna bring up-
that's been a significant issue since the inception of Forbidden Door too, because
right.
you have these matches that are oftentimes being booked on the fly with wrestlers who are not available to AEW on a weekly basis. So they feel contrived, they feel shoehorned. Wrestlers will get announced in multi-man matches and you won't see them at all until Forbidden Door because they're only booked for that particular event. It's been a problem since they launched this show in 2022. It's why I said this is my least favorite show on AEW's yearly calendar. I thought it was exacerbated this year by the fact that New Japan is not in a terribly great place.
No,
and
it's
so as a result, AEW felt like it had to do the heavy lifting, so much so that the AEW cross New Japan promotion felt like a total afterthought. This just became an AEW show featuring some New Japan wrestlers. I think for AEW's purposes, that's better because I don't think that you get a lot out of these cross promotional shows. And so to just book a bunch of feuds that you were going to put on pay-per-view anyway, I think is a better selling point. But at the point that starts to occur, I think you just have to look at this and wonder if it's worth continuing. Unless or until New Japan takes a step forward again.
Well, I will say just real quick, Brandon, Tony Khan did mention this on the media call. Obviously, like the timing of the show, not ideal in place of like the Stardom show and G1, because obviously in a perfect world, they would have wanted to wait like another month for the show because everybody'd be available.
And they usually run it in June.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't want to use that as a crutch, but
sure.
But like, I think what you actually brought up is actually really interesting, Brandon. Like if like everybody was available from New Japan, does that really change the vibe of the shows for like someone like Sean? No, probably not. I will say, I think like on the commentary side, especially Danielson and Walker, they did a tremendous job kind of like educating you on like Hiromu Takahashi, like Bozilla and the young lady from CMLL. I was just like, like very good job. Like and like in a way, like what you, it wasn't like a Michael Cole like spoon feed. They were like giving you like, hey, like this is why you should maybe look at Stardom. Like Bozilla is 21 years old and like she's only been wrestling for like 3 months. Like I from like a general fan perspective, I think this is actually like the best they've actually done presenting outside talent for like people who are not very familiar or maybe don't have like the headspace to kind of watch all these other shows.
Yeah, I wanted to make specific note of that. I'm glad you bring it up now, Brian. I thought that Bryan Danielson was the ultimate highlight of this show.
It was good.
I just thought he was fantastic from start to finish. He was adding significance. He was adding significance to each match. He was bringing fresh perspective. He was filling in silence in the ways that he needed to, laying out when he needed to. I just thought that I truly would have thought that this guy had 20 years at the booth by the way that he was doing all the things that a good commentator does with such fluidity and naturalness. I was just like, by far my favorite part of the show.
I was so amazed on how funny he was.
Yeah,
the stuff he had with Down Callous, where the first line of the Fletcher card, where he asked Don, where's this painting? I wanted to see it. He said, "Oh, well, I'm working on a new one with your tombstone." I was like, and then he brought up the Taylor Swift thing, and he was just I don't know if Birdie would like this, her daddy to be away all the time, but can we kind of get him to go on their weekly show to be a commentator?
Yeah. I don't, the thing is I don't care who he replaces. I think he's
Tony Schiavone.
Sure.
Please.
I mean, I just think that, but that is to say that I think that he was so good that no matter who he replaces, it's an upgrade.
No, it's true.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I do want to call out Walker because he had, if for anybody who's not familiar with New Japan, I appreciate his kind of like, I've met him, very, very, very nice guy. He has this way of, he understands like the nuts and bolts where he sets up his his color commentator very well. He'll just lay out, like you said, Brandon. He's very nuanced in that, and he's still a very young guy. Like I think he's in his 20s, I think, which is kind of amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. I mean, the little quip about the IWGP World Title being the richest prize in sport, and Excalibur and Danielson had to push back on that, like given that it's their show. But it was in a light, joking, like it was lighthearted enough to not make you feel like, oh, there's tension there. Like it worked. I just thought the interplay throughout the show was really, really good. Sean, go ahead. Whatever else you wanted to bring up here.
So a few things, because I had a lot of thoughts. So going back to what you were saying about the guys that can take over with Will and Swerve being hurt now for a while,
yeah,
which I think is big, is I do think, Brian, you made a good point in the sense of it gives other people a chance to step up. Because to me, Mark Briscoe's not a main event guy. I just don't believe that. If he can show it, he lost so much early on, but I think he has gained momentum in the last 6 months. If they could do something with that and actually use it to tell really good stories with him and build you to want to root for him to win the title, which I think they already are behind him, but continue to build good stories with that, I think it could work because the crowd's into him. I'm not into him right now as far as a main event, but the crowd can make me want to believe in him as a main eventer. Darby, I'm just not in as a main eventer. I just don't think he's a main eventer. His style is just, I don't like his style. That's not my style. It's just too crash course stuff, and I don't know if that's what I want to get behind for him winning a title or a world title. I mean he's had the TNT title, but the world title, I'm a little worried about that. But there's other guys like Eddie, he come back healthy. I do think he would be a good guy. So I do think there are options. Main event, I don't know if some of those guys are ready for that spot, that main event spot. So I just wanted to, kind of go with that. If you guys have anything to go, or else I'll just talk about the card in general.
Well, I'm glad you're taking up the mantle for me of disliking Darby Allin, because that's always been my position.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that somebody else gets to fight that spot for me.
Brian, I don't dislike him. I like him, just not as a main event guy. He's not
I'm in the same boat. Yeah.
No, Sean, you actually you have an interesting kind of like talking point on Briscoe. So like, let me ask you this. So do you not believe Briscoe the person just because like you're not into him, or is it based on AEW's presentation where he's lost so much?
Well, yeah, I think it's more AEW's presentation. I like him as a person. He's been through a lot.
Right.
I think he's a great guy. I just think his over-the-top craziness is too much for me sometimes. And I think if they told better stories and had him be more serious consistently and just had good things for him to sink his teeth into, I could get behind him as a main event guy. I definitely could. I think he's the one guy other than Kingston and the guys they've already pushed, and Jay White when he gets back, of course. I mean, Jay White's the obvious main eventer when he's back.
We did, Brandon. I feel so silly. We did forget one. I believe the chat, Derek and others were talking about him. They obviously would have to flip him. Takeshita is the one.
Yeah, I figured. I mean, Takeshita is somebody that I certainly noticed, but I thought we were talking specifically about baby faces. So short of turning a guy, Takeshita certainly feels ready-made to turn.
He's gone all over there. If he's going to be there all the time, I mean, that's great. But if he's going to go to the G1 and do that every year, then I
mean, he might have to save New Japan Pro Wrestling. What a babyface turn.
Yeah.
No, like, I'm dead serious. He might actually have to save the promotion.
Yeah, I mean, a babyface turn for Takeshita, to me, makes the most sense as far as an elevation to that level. But you also have to contend with the notion that if there is a babyface turn, he's going to be tied up with the Callis family for a bit. I mean, you can't get around that. You can't have Takeshita turn and then not have, take his licks from the Callis family. So that would tie him up and out of that main event scene for a bit while they solve that. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. My main thing I wanted to talk about first off before I get into the matches per se is Tony Khan, please listen to me. Listen to all of us. No more chair shots to the head. No more. That's it. If they do another one, I might be like, okay, I'm out. I saw that match was actually really good until the last 5 minutes, and it was awful the last 5 minutes. Everything about that last 5 minutes made me want to just throw my TV across the wall. No more chair shots to the head. Stop with it. Stop. And then he kicks out right afterwards. What are we doing here? And then they go to the awful finish with it just looked bad. I mean, it wasn't Bandito. It just didn't look good. But I'm happy. Here's my thing. I'm happy Brody and Bandito won. I liked that they won. I liked them as a tag team. But stop with the chair shots to the head, and then he kicks out of it immediately afterwards. What are we doing here?
I was gonna bring that. That'll be part of our discussion, Brian, when we get to that match. Just the finishing sequence. I thought there were a lot of issues there in terms of the camera catching everything going on and the rapid pace of that closing sequence. Just really kind of made things fall apart for me. But Sean, I'm with you. I just don't see. I don't see a need for it. I don't think that you gain anything by doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have to go back and watch it. I wonder if it was almost Brody didn't get his hands up quick enough.
He didn't get his hands up at all from what I saw.
Yeah, I really want to go back and watch it because I mean, unless Brody was just like, let's shave this down, and like you said, Sean, like unless you could have built a moment like, you know, if it busts him open, does that really change how you feel? I mean, like you said, I was relatively happy about the result because I thought there was no way Brodito was going to win because I was relatively happy. Well, you know, because, you know, in these types of situations, if something kind of bubbles up and everybody starts getting behind them, you know, they'll like everybody thought FTR was going to win. So we got like a different result than we usually do. So it was like great. But then, like you said, we had that. And the finish was a wet fart, which is unfortunate because I thought that that could have easily been matched in the night, like by quite
it wasn't
miles.
Until the last 5 minutes. It was until the last 5 minutes. It was.
Yeah, by rounds. And I guess we should have even brought up Brody King potentially, or even Bandito. I'm sorry, Brandon. That was two other guys because.
Brody King. Yeah. King's a guy who he's had the crowd behind him. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Tony obviously loves Bandito too, and shout out to him. I feel like he, you know, other than the finish tonight, since his return, he's been great. And shout out to him. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea because obviously he's kind of like a smaller luchador, but he's, you know, they're doing kind of unique stuff with him. I don't know if anybody has seen that kind of like cool vignette that they've done the cowboy stuff, like old school Western with Hechicero leading up to their match for the Ring of Honor World title. That was actually really cool. So they're doing different stuff with them. So I like, if he's not very comfortable doing the live mic, which I understand if there's a language barrier, totally get that. So like if they want to continue to push these guys to the forefront, then like just go with it. But yeah, absolutely, Sean. Like I want to go back and watch it at some point, but yeah, we don't need that.
And here's what my thought too, and I was so frustrated going into that match, even on Dynamite, because the build was fine up until, you know, you're like, okay, we want to have a triple threat match, which we don't need another triple threat tag team match, but okay, we have another triple. So you just have the draw, which normally I don't dislike draws, but the way they did it is so dumb in the way of, you know, it's going to go to a draw, and to think they would want to win the match, but it feels like they don't because they're just doing dives outside the ring and, we're just going to have a draw. And it's like, nobody ever talks about that. It's like, it's idiotic. There's 1 minute left. You should be match, not dive outside stuff. And then you have a draw and they're like, well, we're just going to put them in the match. And it's like, it's not what we want. We want 2 matches. We don't need all these teams. And the thing is, people said FTR was going to win just because it's going to build to the Cope Christian stuff, which, whatever. They don't need titles to have that match. We didn't need Cope and Christian winning the tag team titles. Like you could tell that story without them having to win the tag team titles. So all of that was it was fine up until the build to it on Dynamite, and then the last 5 minutes of that, which I just don't want chair shots to the head in either company. I just don't want it. I don't want them. They're not good for anybody. They just hurt. We already have. Look at the injuries we already have now. We don't need Brody having an injury of some kind or a concussion.
Yeah.
Like we don't need that. But going to the Tony Athena match, I really enjoyed the match itself was fine. I did like it, but again, it went into the build of the match where I think it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. They just have Athena win a contract that she doesn't need. It's just weird. That's how she needs to get a title match. And her character just doesn't feel, something's missing. I don't know. Like, I don't like her like yelling and screaming and just doing some of the stuff she's doing. It doesn't work for me. I know she had the feud with Billy Starks, and that's why they're together now, because it built to them having a friendship now. And I get that. I didn't see it in the Ring of Honor, but I knew that's what was going on.
Right.
And so Billy with her just feels, just it is what it is. But then I just knew Tony wasn't going to lose because Athena hasn't been built up to me enough to win the title from Tony. I just think they've done a rough job with Athena. So I want to hear what you guys have thought about the build to Athena and what she's done since she's come on the AEW roster, because I think they could do so much more with her. And her losing to Mercedes and Tony, yeah, it's Mercedes and Tony, but build up newer stars, and you have one you could build up, and I don't feel like they're doing that with Athena right now. So what do you think about those things?
Do you want to go first, Brandon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I will say, Sean, I actually agree with you. At first, when they started to build the feud, I was kind of just, where's the more? I need some more meat. I was kind of waiting for it. Now, I would say the last few weeks where they kind of developed the O-Face as a kill shot and Tony Storm was actually losing matches, I was like, oh, okay. Like I can get a little behind this. Like you've actually made it plausible that Tony Storm could actually lose on the night. And obviously the Dynamite, they were building up the next spot and the relationship with Alex Windsor, which was, very cool as well. You definitely want a little bit more meat on it for sure. I didn't think it was going to be like this big detriment if Athena was going to lose this contract match. Cause like you said, Sean, I never really thought Tony was going to lose this match either. Now I would say it probably hasn't helped that, Athena's just existed in ROH forever. Now to her credit, this is exact, like her ROH run. This is exactly what she's wanted to do. Like she's doing this, she's doing her like kind of like all women's promotion, her wrestling school, like she's a local Dallas. Cool. Like if you are actively happy with your job, like as a fan, I'm not gonna be like pissy or moany about you not being on TV because if you're doing what you want to do, I mean, props to you. Like I'm happy you're happy at your job. Like that's all that really matters to me personally. And I think now her being she's been on AEW pay-per-views like 2 consecutive cycles. You probably need a little bit more. I presume that they're running her and Storm back. I think they are for All Out. I don't know if you step it up or do some type of 2 out of 3 falls. Now, I like you said, Sean, for me, I need a little bit more meat on the bone. Now, you can still do like Tony Storm, even with this timeless character, she can still do serious stuff. Like you can do it. So like it's just a matter. Now with Athena too, it's a little bit tricky because she is with her character. Like I think what she's presenting on screen, this is who she is as a person, which is kind of cool, right? She's a nerd. Like she's a big nerd. So that's why she's into the Minion stuff, blah, blah, blah. But then it's also like, how do you kind of like present her as a huge ass kicker when she's kind of like so small too? That's it's a problem. Like it is, right? Because she's powerful, like she can do all this cool stuff and she has this great kill shot, but like what do you do to kind of like make her more menacing, I guess? Like how do you like where it's just like holy crap, Athena's gonna beat a Tony Storm for the title at All Out. Like what do you do? So I like what you like your concerns are very valid with that, Sean, but like I'm willing to kind of like see what they kind of do as a reset re-rack because I'm pretty sure they're running this back at All Out in some way or form.
Yeah, it does feel like that's the case, and I'm with you both. I think that one of the biggest things in this most recent run for Tony Storm, and sort of the ascension of her star power and position on the card. One of the most notable things to me is that her challengers often do not feel like they are in a position to take the title. They feel decidedly a step or two below her. I think the only time in her run thus far that we have seen someone equal or possibly greater her star power is Mercedes Moné. And so to me, it still feels like that is the opponent. That is the opponent where a title change feels most likely and most acceptable. I want Athena to get to that level. I don't think that she's reached it yet, despite the success in Ring of Honor, because for all the work that they've done on with all the work they've done with her in Ring of Honor, the simple fact remains: people don't watch Ring of Honor. The large majority of people do not watch Ring of Honor, and you can tell people until you're blue in the face that she's been Ring of Honor Women's World Champion for 1,000 days or whatever it is.
It's a title offer. People don't need it anymore. Like, give it to somebody else who needs it, who actually needs it, who needs to do something.
And people don't care because you're champion of a promotion for 1,000 days that people are not watching. And when you say 1,000 days, that's something that you can say, but when people haven't been following along with that and they can't quantify it and think about it in real world time, the way that you could say Roman Reigns' world title run that was 1,000+ days, it doesn't feel consequential. If you're not there feels like a significant difference between watching, say you're a big AEW fan and there is a champion in that company that's been champion for 1,000 days. I don't care what title it is. That's going to feel like a much bigger deal than announcers telling you that this woman has been champion in this secondary promotion that we don't feature, that doesn't have a TV deal. She's been champion there for 1,000 days. We don't really talk about it. She doesn't come out with the belt most of the time, but she's been there doing the work. It just doesn't mean what they think that it means. And so there needs to be more work with Athena on the AEW main roster to get her to a point where she feels like a credible challenger the way that Mercedes Moné did.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the thing. And I want to talk about this real quick just on the women is you were talking about earlier, Brian. Yes, Megan Bayne, I do like her. I do think they've kept her strong, which is a huge thing in AEW. They don't do that with a lot of people. And I think with her, again, they have to have her. Eventually, she's going to have to talk. If she's going to be somebody that's going to beat Toni Storm or be able to beat, which she can beat her, even though she already lost to her, which I wish they wouldn't have done that. But that's another thing. But if they're going to if she can beat Toni, just have her talk at some point. Because I think other than Megan, my other issue is, again, I'm with you guys. I like Willow Nightingale. I do like what they've done, but her character to me right now is not in a good place. Like, I just think her promos have been all over the place lately. I haven't liked a lot of the backstage stuff they've been doing with her, and I just think she's lost way too much in big feuds. And if you're wanting her to be the main event and win one of these big titles, they got to do it soon. I just think eventually you're going to lose out on her. You're going to be like, I don't care as much about her because she's not winning. She's not doing anything important. She's just, doing these crazy promos backstage, and I just don't feel like it's helping her in any way. And with Stat, I'm out on Statlander as far as a character. In the ring, she's really good. There's no character there at all. Even if she gets with Moxley, nobody, like, the Death Riders to me are just dead. I don't think her going with them is going to help her in any way become a main event level challenger. I just don't see that personally. And if you look at every other women on the main card, they're just mid card people. Like, they had something with Julia Hart. Now she's in a mid card faction that isn't going anywhere. They're just a mid card faction. Sky Blue's definitely not. Ty Mel's definitely not. Penelope Ford's definitely not. There's no other women that you're just like, man, I really want to get behind this person. And most of them are heels. Megan Bayne's the only, other than Willow, Megan Bayne is the only one I could get behind as a main event level talent if they can do something and have her to talk every once in a while and just have a mystique with her. Because other than that, I don't see anybody there for Toni other than Mercedes, and we've already seen it. We've already done that. So I just want them to build up more women, build up more of these women. They have talent, build it up. That did not need to be in a mid-card faction with Julia Hart and Sky Blue. I just don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think it's going to lead her to anywhere promising. So if you have any thoughts on that, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, and it's weird because, Tony has mentioned previously that they're kind of like holding like the tag titles like aside for now, which if you have women's tag titles, and if you've got this void of TV time now, especially like with the lack of men's main invaders, just throw it out there. Just like you said, like you have an opportunity. Like, I don't like having to just depend on mid-card titles for women, because look how it's kind of worked out for the US and in Intercontinental on the WWE side. I mean, obviously Becky Lynch is doing great things, but that's more just Becky Lynch, not necessarily like how they've like developed like, you know, a function. Because like you said, Sean, if you have kind of like a whole plethora of mid-card people, like let them be constructive, go for something, and then like peel off stories, and then that person can win a feud and then become a main eventer at some point. I don't really hate that idea at all. I mean, now I will say I'm a big Queen Amanada guy. I like the Queen. Jamie Hayter is obviously like another person to me personally, Sean. Like it's unfortunate her injuries.
Yep.
Yeah, she was, it was just one of those things, out of sight, out of mind, because she was kind of like that. Her and Cheetah were, and Britt Baker were kind of like the torchbearers of the division when it was kind of really, really bare, because it's so unfortunate when her injury happened, because she was real. I want to say she and Cheetah were the second ever main event match on Dynamite. I want to say, because obviously Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa did the lights out match at Dynamite in the pandemic era, but I want to say Jamie Hayter and Cheetah were like the first like official like straight up match on Dynamite that they main evented. So Jamie Hayter, and then everybody loves Jamie Hayter now. Like, I know everybody's like not into her 70s look or whatever. I don't mind it at all. I think it's actually kind of unique. I'm all for uniqueness, because there's too much similarities in wrestling. Now I think there's a potential if you want to flip her heel, because I think there's an easy story that you could do with her and Toni Storm if they wanted to kind of go in a different direction from Athena. I pivot to Toni. Like, I know Jamie's feuding with Tekla, but I almost say let her win that feud and just move on to something bigger, better, because I think there's a meaty, juicy story that you could tell with Toni Storm, because Jamie Hayter's never gotten her rematch after Toni Storm beat her and like wrote her off like when she was gone for like 16, 18 months or whatever it was.
She's also a good candidate for Mercedes too. If they don't want to turn her, that's a good meaty program that they can get into with Mercedes, who I think has really lacked solid challengers. And I think Mercedes has done a fantastic job with what she's been given. But I think as we'll get into with tonight's match, for example, I think that there's more that they can do with Mone, and Hayter is a good possibility for that. Sean, I want to run through the card top to bottom here, and we're already running long, so I'll do that with just Brian. But I want to give you an opportunity to just quickly go over anything else that you want to bring up, and then Brian and I can kind of hit on it as we work through the matches.
Yeah, so I was just talking about the MJF Hangman match real quick. Let you guys talk about it later. I think the match was really good. Other than I just think MJF makes everything so convoluted. I just don't know why he's got to make it the way he does. But that's the way MJF does, and it's kind of frustrating me because the talent's there. But I just think the last 5 minutes, like him he never did anything for a while to make Paige get disqualified. He didn't really try anything until the end, until the ring did. And I just think, and then the ref stuff, yes. Okay, Bryce redeems himself at the end, but he looked like an idiot 2 minutes before, and they just do all this crap with the refs, and it just gets so convoluted. Just have a great match. If he's going to lose, MJF can lose clean. It's okay. If anybody can bounce back, MJF with his talent, quote unquote, until he tried to set Briscoe on fire last week. Which
crime spree, we're back.
Oh my God. I couldn't. I almost wanted to throw my TV after that segment. I was like, oh my God, what are we doing? But anyway, I thought the match was good up until that. And I don't know. They're going to go long with this feud. I know they are, obviously. But I just don't know if MJF can't win the title right now. He's not ready, man. His character's all over the place. I don't like the Hurt Syndicate stuff anyway. Now they got that thrown in with all the stuff he's doing with Hangman. I want to tell better stories with MJF. He's got to be better than this. And where do you think they're going after this match? And what do you think of the match? And that's all I got, guys. I appreciate it. I'll get in the chat and chat with you guys.
No, cool. Thanks, Sean. See you guys. Brandon, you want to kind of reverse and kind of just start there since John already asked about it?
Yeah, we can take that and then and kind of work our way backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Sean, Brandon. I thought I really, really was digging the match. Like, I didn't even mind it. Obviously went 30 minutes. MJF, like, obviously, like, about 25 minutes in, you knew it was coming. Like Sean said, like, for critique, MJF didn't really try to get Page disqualified until the end, which kind of defeated the purpose of the entire stip. Which, if you're going to do that, just do a straight match anyway. MJF's completely capable of losing clean. It's completely fine. Obviously we want to get the heat and be mad at MJF, but MJF could have easily won the match or lost the match and gotten heat on MJF or Hangman afterwards. But I would say that, like, the referee part, like Sean brought up, completely understandable. Like, I feel like there's this weird gap of, I guess in canon, Bryce Rensburg is the smartest official other than Aubrey Edwards. But, like, I wish they wouldn't make the officials look as silly as they do, as often as they do. It's not on purpose, but sometimes it kind of just happens, and it's like the staging or how they film it. It's like, why did we get that? It doesn't look good. But no, I'm with Sean. I really liked. I thought the match was cushion. Like, as contrived as the finish was, I was afraid it was going to be a lot goofier. So the way it kind of like turned out, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Obviously, like the Briscoe stuff, it's like, what are we doing? Are we doing a triple threat? Are we setting up some type of meaty dog collar match for Briscoe and MJF, which, again, like he brings up, is another problem because, like, we just had all this violence. And to me, if you're going to do something like that, like at All Out, that better be the only nobody else is bleeding. I don't care if you're John Moxley, Darby Allin, like that's the only, unless it's like the hard way or somebody busts their nose, like that's the only type of blood on that match. Cause that, they're going to go hog wild. But yeah, I mean, obviously to me, I'm getting the vibes of this feud must continue because, I mean, honestly, right now, I don't even if they they went another direction, I don't even know. Like, I would want to see, like, on Wednesday, just my preference, Brandon, like, just for a TV title match, just for grins, I would love to just see Hangman Page versus Roosh. Just like, just give me like 12, 15 minutes on Dynamite and for the main event, because they're going to kill each other. And Roosh is like a maniac and he likes to hit hard. And I think that could be like a really fun TV match where, because a lot of people were afraid, okay, what's going to be our Kane? What's going to be our big show first feud for Hangman Page? So I do appreciate that they're not doing that. But like, if they want to give us something kind of like entertaining on Dynamite just for Hangman to do, I don't hate that idea at all, honestly.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept to kind of get Hangman in some not short title defenses, but one-off title defenses. Yeah. Sort of build the mystique of the reign while you sort of get MJF back in position, because, like you said, Brian, I think it's inherently clear that that's the direction they're going. They're going to continue down this path. They made particular note of having the camera focus in on MJF seething in the ring with his contract after the match was over. So MJF, of course, still has that contract. Part of the stipulation that was set forth in this one is that he didn't need to use it in order to get this title match with Hangman Adam Page. So he can still cash in that contract and get his rematch. Quickly going over the particulars here of this match, Hangman Adam Page retains the World Heavyweight Championship in just under 32 minutes. I want to reiterate what Sean first brought up, and Brian, you kind of expanded upon. I thought that this was largely very good, and they had me with the story that they were telling throughout most of the match. I thought that it was wise of them to go down that path of having MJF test Hangman's patience and try to get him disqualified, so that for a situation like this to work, you have to have a Weasley heel who is more than willing to take a world championship by hook or crook, any means necessary. And so for MJF, it's blatantly obvious from the opening bell that he views a pinfall or submission the same way that he views dragging Page down to his level and forcing a disqualification, which will net him the world championship. I liked that, and I liked largely how they told the story about that throughout. The exception came late when things got really messy, really convoluted, involved a number of ref spots that had to happen with basically pinpoint precision in order to work. And I think when you get into situations, and we'll talk about this on other matches during the card tonight, the results are often not great.
Mm-hmm.
I give Page and MJF a great deal of credit here for hitting all of their spots with great precision, so that the ruse that they were trying to pull, the story they were trying to tell, was pulled off. They pulled it off from a visual perspective on the show. I didn't like how convoluted it was. I didn't like how many hoops they had to jump through to get to the finish, but I give them credit for at least hitting all the beats, which is not something that I can say about some of the other matches on this very show that required and involved similar shenanigans. So kudos to them for that. But still, my preference would not be the level of shenanigans we saw in the closing stretch of this. I thought that the match itself was too good to devolve into that sort of situation. And I thought the story that MJF and Page were telling was nuanced enough to not need that level of shenanigans, but they went for it because that's just often what AEW does in these big match situations, is they rely too significantly on the swerve and the overwhelming interference and the craziness and these conjured up spots where you get in so many AEW main event matches right now, this overbooked mess in the final few minutes. And I thought this suffered from that when it really didn't need to, because you just have two guys who are so talented at what they do and the roles that they're in. Now, I say all that with the clear acknowledgement that the crowd loved this. They ate it up. I mean, they loved every spot. They loved the craziness of it. They loved the ref spots at the end. And so when I hear something like that, I have to take a step back and just acknowledge that, hey, maybe this just isn't for me. Would I prefer that there was a clean, do I think that they could get a crowd more invested in the peripheral, in the week to week stuff, and as such maybe grow their business if they were less reliant on this type of booking? Yes, absolutely. But for the crazies that are paying the money to be there, for the diehard AEW fans, they don't care. They like this. And so you're left with Tony Khan being validated by the people in the building. And as such, I don't think he's going to make a change.
Yeah, it's kind of wrestling kind of can't help itself sometimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. Because I'm pretty sure their first match that they had a while back, that was clean from what I remember. I remember it being very good. I can't remember it like being any type of maybe there was like obviously typical MJF trying to use the ring stuff, but that doesn't, typical trope doesn't even bother me. Like you said, there could have been a very nuanced thing that they were trying to tell, especially if it was. I thought, especially when Page spit on MJF, I was thinking, oh, is he going to get himself disqualified? I thought that would have actually been. I would have liked that more, honestly. I just because it's like Page is getting under his skin and playing
I don't know that there's any other wrestler on the roster that works for other than MJF, because if anybody can spin a disqualification title win as a crowning achievement,
it's him.
It's him. And he's the only one who has the credibility and the mic skills to pull that off without making it feel like it's a step beneath the main event.
Yeah. He's too good to try to like make chicken salad out of chicken like crap. So let's like not have to like force of will make him try to work too hard when he's too talented, and there's so much other things that he could be using his brain and creative power for.
Yeah, and moving him away from the Hurt Syndicate, and we'll get into that here as we progress too, has felt like a bit of a return to form for him. I'm glad to see this iteration of MJF back felt like he was on a detour for a while there that was beneath him. And they had other players. They had other players in that main event level, and they didn't need him to be at the forefront the way that they may have needed in the past. But now we've already talked about the stockpile of injuries that they've got on the top of the card. They're going to need a guy like MJF to really step up and come through. And I thought he largely did that tonight.
Yeah. Lovely gear, by the way, from MJF. I don't know this for sure, but I coined it Jake the Snake attire. That's what it kind of looked like.
Cool. Brian, let's go ahead and we'll turn back the clock here, kind of march through the rest of the show chronologically now that we've hit the two main events. I want to, leading into that, just throw up a couple comments here from Graham Hall in the chat, who was at the show.
All right.
For those listening to audio after the fact, Graham said it was very AEW, which I think we've certainly established. Fun, exciting, but very much lacking in importance and low on suspense in terms of the match outcomes. I think that's something that we've touched upon here throughout. He follows that up by just saying the place was packed, noisy, and involved throughout. Absolutely. You could hear that throughout the show. No question there. But he didn't think that anyone thought that MJF, Swerve, or Athena were taking the title belts in their respective matches, and that's an issue. I think that speaks to, as we were discussing with Sean a little while ago, the overall issue with the Forbidden Door concept, where it feels very one-off. It doesn't feel like it is meant to. It fits within AEW canon, but it's certainly a sidestep. It's a sideshow attraction. In the same way, I look at it akin to WWE's now retired, but possibly eventually returning format with Survivor Series, where it feels like a step away from the weekly storylines, where they can shoehorn everybody into these predetermined, essentially, matches with red versus blue or whatever, champion versus champion. Forbidden Door started out very much akin to that concept. Over the years, because of New Japan's sort of decline, it's evolved into something a little bit different. And this felt much closer to an AEW card featuring New Japan than it did AEW cross New Japan. So this year was quite a bit different in that respect. But at the same time, I think that the lack of importance we've seen with these shows over the years bled into some of the booking for this show, where I think that Tony, comfortable with the concept and the relative lackadaisical nature of the concept, was less inclined or motivated to put forth significant story advancing angles, and instead presented a series of very good matches, as AEW is often does, but that were of relatively low consequence to the week-to-week programming.
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point, Brandon, because considering what they have to go against next month, I wonder if they kind of just not like consolidated, but just made kind of like had an internal conversation with themselves. Just, you know what, let's have a pretty good show, but let's have a great show next month, knowing they've got counter programming, and you don't have kind of like the obstacle of like the concept of Forbidden Door. You can kind of focus in on your own people again and kind of just like reach off for them. Because again, like we said, this is kind of like akin to just WrestleMania Fallout, because a lot of the same feuds that you saw tonight are going to carry over to All Out. Yeah.
For sure. Just general sentiment here from the chat before we totally move on from the world title match. Lots of comments just sort of describing disillusion with MJF and his current presentation, which is, I think, understandable given where he's at, where he's been at the last several months. Mark Pischetti, for example, saying that MJF versus Punk was a big feel main event, but now feels only a little better than The Miz. And there were times, there have been times over the last 6 to 8 months where I still wouldn't agree fully, but I think that the comparison wouldn't be totally out of left field. I think he's redeemed himself in a lot of ways. And I think that the work that he's done over the course of the last several weeks has put him back into that main event conversation. But MJF is certainly not the character. He's not swinging with the weight that he swung with a couple of years ago by any stretch.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and work through the rest of the card here chronologically. We won't spend a ton of time match to match,
Sure.
just because we've already run pretty long. But let's go through and talk about these here. The official match card begins with the tag team match. Christian Cage and Adam Copeland taking on Killswitch and Kip Sabian with Mother Wayne. Killswitch, of course, returning this past Wednesday and replacing the injured Nick Wayne in this tag team match. Copeland and Christian, your winners in just under 14 minutes. I thought this was a fun opener that didn't overstay its welcome. They certainly were aided a significant amount by their super, super hot crowd that I thought stayed up and stayed alive through the vast majority of this one, which is a testament to the London crowd, because so often in these AEW shows that run particularly long, the crowd could just get drained out by about the halfway point, and they have a really hard time coming up for anything but other than maybe the main event. But they stayed consistent throughout here. I thought, again, our first taste of Bryan Danielson on commentary, and he was fantastic, setting the scene very, very well, telling a really compelling story about the relationship between Cope and Christian. Thought that Christian played the character very, very well. One complaint here in a match that I thought otherwise came off great was the Doomsday Device spot with Killswitch, where Killswitch had Kip Sabian up on his shoulders and essentially walked him right into the spear off the top from Copeland.
Yeah.
And it was so contrived that Danielson and the other announcers had to immediately call it out, because it genuinely looked like Killswitch was turning. And they did nothing. There was no way for them to explain it away. Danielson just had to kind of act befuddled because it made no sense in the context of the match. Brian, did I miss something as I was covering the show for PWTorch, or was it really that much of a mess?
Well, like, I will say throughout the match, you could tell that they were trying to, like, I don't want to say they weren't saying, can we coexist, but Luchasaurus Killswitch was kind of throwing him around, which he threw him that cannonball, he threw him around like a rag doll, and I think that's how he busted open his eyelid there. So,
and
they
sold the fact that Sabian was bossing Killswitch around like Cage did, and I liked that. I thought that was great, but it didn't set up the Doomsday situation.
Well, and it's weird because I thought they were trying to almost like a suplex situation on the Cope, which obviously would have made more sense. But no, I'm with you. I don't really like logistically the spot itself as a fixture makes zero sense. I'm with you there for sure.
Go ahead. Any thoughts on this one?
No, I was actually I was pleasantly surprised. This actually exceeded my expectations. I was kind of curious what the opener was going to be. I thought, is this a chance where Page and MJF could open? Was this like an Okada Swerve spot? I thought this was actually very, very fun. And I honestly, you know what? I think this is actually the perfect spot for Adam Copeland right now in his career. This was such a refreshing match in this ugly 35-minute old man grit and fest that we have been getting from him. This is so much fun because I'm under the belief Christian Cage is going to get the funny bones out of this guy. And we had the return of the Duster. Like, I think this is the first time Cope has busted out the Duster in AEW before. And I liked how he kind of like didn't do his typical soak in the I guess the vibes where he looks back. He ran straight to the ring. And so I was obviously at All In Texas when he did like the Penta thing or Jeff Hardy thing. He got a lot of crap for that, which he kind of looked dumb doing that. And it's like, well, okay, you're supposed to be the baby face, and maybe he kind of knows his time is getting near, and I think that's why he's taking these moments so seriously. But like you said, I don't think we've really shined enough praise on this crowd. This crowd was fantastic. I cannot, like you said, having the UK wrestling experience, I would highly recommend anybody have it. Like, if you've not done it, I was fortunate enough to be at All In last year in London. Even at the whatever the capacity was, it wasn't like the 80, but like the 50K people there were fantastic from start to finish. It's just a different vibe. And what I would have honestly done, I would have like, once they immediately started singing Cope's music, I would have just cut it and just let the crowd sing it. Like, that was so cool. And I think shout out to Australia, because I feel like the Australia show was kind of like the first group of fans started really doing it. And people love Cope, man. I understand if he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he's especially if you've not seen him before wrestle, you want to see it one more time. You want to see him. And he's going to keep on getting these reactions. And I think this relationship that he's going to have with Cage, I think this is going to get him where he needs to go. And I think I'm so happy. We haven't talked about it yet, but I'm so happy they're not feuding with FTR for the tag titles next month, because they don't need that. Like Cage now, like, did they rush this completely? Yes, absolutely. But I think the last 2 to 3 weeks, it's been a lot better. Cage, after that weird kind of whatever the hell that first promo was with Shervani, it was bad. I don't like Cage sometimes can kind of ramble. And I feel like since then, he might have heard the criticisms, read the feedback, and said, okay, let's like fine tune this character a little bit. And how they're kind of like, we're waiting for the flash photography moment. It's going to happen. And, babies are going to go in the air. But overachievement, I really like this match. And, can't stress enough how nice, heartwarming it was to see Luchasaurus kill switch back in the ring, considering he had a life and death experience. And, my wife, she's a big Brother OG. So once I actually told her, I was like, she was like, hey, is that guy from Big Brother? I said, yeah, sure is. So, yep.
Yeah, I remember. I'm a Big Brother fan as well. I remember watching him back in the day on that show. It's been cool to kind of follow his career since then.
Yep.
I'm with you. I was higher on this match than I thought I would be. And higher than a lot of people in the chat and seem to be as well. Not necessarily enjoying the reunion for Copeland and Christian as of yet. I've been high on it, and I think part of it is the nostalgia. We haven't seen it in such a long time. Part of it is the huge amount of respect that I have for both Copeland and Christian. I've been a huge fan of both throughout their career. And I just think that they're two guys that have earned the right to go out any way they want to go out. And if this is what they want to do, if they want to have one more trip around the sun with, as a tag team, as the thing that kind of brought them into the spotlight, I say let them do it. And I think that there are worse things you could be doing and worse stories you could be telling with these two at this stage of their career. I think that Adam Copeland at this stage is best served in a position like this, where the headlines of Copeland and Christian one more time is enough to carry significant weight and put their matches at a semi-main event level, which is all you can ask from Copeland at this point, because I don't think that with the work rate level that is expected out of AEW that they pride themselves in, I don't think that it's reasonable to ask Copeland to go out there and deliver that kind of match in a main event on pay-per-view anymore. I just don't think that is within his wheelhouse, and he doesn't need to do it. There's no need to put his body through it when he can work these tag matches with Copeland, with Christian, get some of the biggest reactions of the night, and do great business for the company.
Yeah,
I just think that this is the perfect spot for him at this point, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm as far as the tag title discussion goes, I am totally fine with it not being for the titles. I really like the team of Brody King and Bandito and think they can do some cool stuff with the tag titles. Had they gone in the other direction, though, I don't think that I would be I wouldn't be as averse to it as you are. And the only reason for that is because I do think that Cope and Christian challenging for those titles elevates them to a point that they haven't been at in recent history. So the AEW tag titles had so much behind them in the early days, and they were, they were on a pedestal. They were. It was a situation where we were often wishing that WWE could get to that level with their tag titles again. Then, of course, they did during the Bloodline era, and since that time, both titles have fallen off considerably in terms of overall importance. So that's the only argument that I could make in favor of it being for the tag titles. But I'm in general agreement that this rivalry just doesn't need it. They don't need it. It would be a situation where they're doing a favor to the titles more than the other way around.
Exactly. And if people weren't necessarily high on the Cope and Christian experience yet, wait until the match next month, because if for anybody who hasn't seen the match, I don't know if you've seen it this year, Brandon. Did you see the Outrunners FTR match on Collision?
I might have, but I possibly not. I don't.
Well, I will say, to me, that's my favorite TV match of the year, because the way FTR worked that with the Outrunners, it wasn't like this. You know, the Young Bucks work on a different level, but the way FTR kind of formatted the match and laid it out was perfect for it. Was like an old school, like Mid-South tag team match. And with FTR's brilliance and like Cope and Christian's brilliance, like those minds put together, they're not going to go this like 35-minute crazy thing. Like you said, Cope and Christian don't need to do that. So and I think that match with the Outrunners, I don't think it even went 20 minutes. I could be wrong, but like there's like that sweet spot nowadays where I'm not looking for this 35-minute epic. Give me like a nice little 15 to 20-minute sweet spot. Yeah. And I'm happy. Like, especially if you like do something different, because with, quality, we're spoiled with quality wrestling. I think I'm just like, my palate is just open to the idea of something different. And if it's like this kind of like ugly, like 80 Mid-South like fight, especially in Canada, like the heat that they're gonna like get in that arena, that's gonna be great.
Yeah, I don't need 8 minutes of Christian Cage taking a beat down trying to make a hot tag to Cope. No, I don't need it. We see it. We see it all the time across both companies. They can do so much more, and I think they will. I mean, this is a hand-tailored, hand-picked situation. We know Copeland's relationship with FTR. We know that this is obviously exactly what he wants to be doing. So I think they're gonna have an impressive match or string of matches if they go more than one. All right, Brian, let's keep marching through here. Second match of the night: Kyle Fletcher defending the TNT Championship against Hiromu Takahashi. Kyle Fletcher, accompanied by Don Callis, who joined the commentary team for this one and had some great back and forth with Bryan Danielson, as we've kind of already alluded to. I thought this was another good match, aided by a hot crowd. Fletcher wins this one in just about 15 and a half minutes to retain the TNT title. As kind of pointed out in the chat by Graham, who was in attendance, never really in doubt here. It never felt like Takahashi was a legitimate threat to Fletcher's title, and I think that speaks to a larger issue with the show as a whole. But I was impressed with the match overall. Fletcher looks like a star, acts like a star, carries himself like a star. He has sort of stepped into the Konosuke Takeshita role while Takeshita has been working the G1. So that's been good to see. I continue to have reservations about the presentation of the Don Callis family, in the sense that I've made this argument before. When you have a faction, it's good to have wrestlers at various levels of the card, so they're not competing for attention within the same division. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that they've had with Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita in particular. They're both competing for Don Callis's attention, and they're doing so within the same division with the same hopes and aspirations. So when they are guys who are pretty much at a level playing field on the roster, at some point wouldn't you think that they would cross paths? Because they're one's got to sort of one up the other one to move up the card. They're currently sitting around the same spot. That's been an issue, a larger issue I've had with the presentation of the family for a while. But here I thought Fletcher was really, really good. This is where we got, of course, that you alluded to, Brian, the Taylor Swift comment from Danielson, which I thought was, I mean, a little over the top, but still funny. It showed that, the sort of dad joke, the dad humor of Danielson. I think that Fletcher's improved significantly over the last several months, from the new Tron video, the updated look, the new theme music, which shout out Hot Mulligan, one of my favorite bands in the world. So that's been really cool. I continue to look forward to his rise.
Yeah, I would say in the traditional form of Forbidden Door, I felt like the vibes for this match at the very least. This felt like what you were kind of traditionally look for. Like, did it resonate Orange Cassidy and Will Ospreay that first time? No, I don't. And nothing's ever gonna fit that ever again. But like, I felt like the competition was there because obviously, like, Walker helped that as well. The great commentary for Danielson, I'm sure that helped as well. With Fletcher, it's interesting too, because he has this way, he can still stooge in a match, but then still like look like a killer. And he's not a guy that's going to make you look bad either. Obviously like the apron powerbomb from Hiromu was very good. I like that a lot. I liked how they were trying to tell a story of like Hiromu just taking out Fletcher's leg with the dragon screw. That was very nice. Like, simple. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Very, very okay with that. But I mean, like, if this, I don't know what reset of the TNT title of this is. This is like the 6th or 7th time they've tried to restore the feeling of the TNT title. I mean, this is kind of what you want from a guy. From Fletcher to kind of show his dominance, and like you said, the presentation look, like I'm all about him wearing pink as well. Like I think that's a great look. Him doing that, and I mean I feel like the we should just refer the Don Callis family as the new NWO, because there's like a new member every week at this point, which is like kind of interesting because like you have all these like top tier people, like you said. And it's like there's really no drop off. You have Okada, you have Takeshita, and you have Fletcher. To me, I kind of view them all on the same level. And then you have all the pin eaters. You have I need to give Josh Alexander a little bit more respect. I think Josh Alexander is a nice kind of middle tier person. But then you have Archer, Monster of the Week, and then you kind of have almost like the C-level Don Callis family members with Roppongi Vice. And I do like Hechicero. I understand why everybody likes him. I don't think he's like a star. But he's added in there as well. And I'm sure there's other variations. Obviously Brian Cage, he's still on the shelf. Recovery. Hopefully Brian Cage is back in there. But yeah, there's a lot of Don Callis family members, especially with the we haven't really touched it on the addition of Wardlow, which weird. I don't really know what to think about that yet, but like, it's one of those things. It's so weird. Like, do you ever see like a match graphic and it's like, that looks really weird, but I kind of want to look at it. Like, that's why the Wardlow presentation and experiment has gotten so bad. I don't really, I'm not like poo-pooing any type of option because I don't really think there's a good option. So like, if you're willing to kind of see what Don Callis can do as like a mouthpiece and just let Wardlow try to get over again, sure, why not? All right. Like, and also I find this as an interesting test for Swerve. And it's like, Swerve, are you that, like, let's see how great you are. Can you actually get Wardlow back to where he was? Because it's unfortunate because I don't want to revisit like old history with Wardlow because just real quick, Brendan, if you don't mind, that Double or Nothing was like the first show I was actually covering in a media aspect, like, and not knowing if MJF was going to show up that night. I mean, I don't want to say MJF kind of like spearheaded Wardlow's momentum, but it certainly didn't help it. And MJF did business that night, which is great, but it just, I don't know. It just, once that was kind of in the air, it just never felt the same. And obviously he won the TNT title. He had like moments with Orange Cassidy that were like fun. The feud with Joe and Hobbs wasn't great, obviously. So that didn't, and obviously him getting injured was not ideal because they were trying to push him. Oh God, what, he was in the Devil Crew, and that's where he got hurt. I forgot about that. I thought potentially maybe there was aspects of like, God, maybe should we just pair him and MJF together again? Question mark, just to, give MJF something to do. And then we know Wardlow could be good at that. So I know we jumped ahead here a little bit and we can skip it over once we get past the tag title stuff, but like, I don't know. I'm willing to look at it to see what happens.
Yeah. He's been given a lot of chances, and I'm not opposed to trying to work Wardlow back into the mix, but as you kind of mention it puts him in a precarious position right out of the gate, because I mean they've already got their heavy in Lance Archer, and granted Archer is sort of defined at a certain point, but it sort of makes Archer feel redundant when you've got a group of people that large. I mean, Derek Mitchell mentioning that there are more members in the Callis family than the NWO corporate ministry and the New Blood in WCW. And it kind of feels that way. It's just a random catch-all of a bunch of wrestlers. And you have some that stand out that are actually pushed. But for the vast majority, they're all just kind of guys who are there for AEW to have plausible deniability to say, well, we are doing something with them. Even though the average viewer can tell that that's not necessarily the case. Just a couple of other comments here. Sadler saying that he thinks that Fletcher has the highest upside of the AEW youngsters, which I think is certainly true. Sean, VIP member Sean, who had joined us a short time ago, saying Josh Alexander, who you mentioned, is taking too many pins. So a lot of guys in there, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and not a lot to show for it except for those guys at the top. So we'll see, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again here as we continue down the card. Match number 3, Mercedes Moné defending the TNT championship in a 4-way match against Alex Windsor, Bozilla, and Persephone. Moné, your winner, no surprise here in just over 15 minutes. I thought there was some innovative action here, but man, pretty sloppy overall. Bozilla was impressive at a lot of different points, but she's very clearly still green and putting this whole thing together and getting ahead of herself. There's a couple of real dangerous spots there.
I thought she legit like broke her neck at that Hurricane. I was like, like once she started moving around, but like the way Mercedes got her up, but then it's like she didn't go. And I was just like, Mercedes did a lot of all you have to do is do the bump. Mercedes did the hardest part. She got your like powerful butt over.
It felt a lot like one legitimate superstar and 3 women who were trying to find themselves. And this is sort of what I point to when I talk about Forbidden Door often feeling like a passé concept at this point. The AEW roster is so loaded with talent, even with all the injuries that are mounting against them, that it feels like they are taking valuable TV time away and opportunity away from wrestlers who are already struggling to get on the card in order to give those opportunities to outside talent. And it's one thing when that outside talent is really well established and is a big name outside of the company.
Like a Stephanie Blair.
Yes, exactly. But here it felt like you had 3 women who were very much sort of on the come up and maybe could have used a little bit more marination before they were put into a situation like this in a match this big on pay-per-view with Moné. I just thought Moné dwarfed them all in terms of star quality. She's clearly the right winner here. So this had its moments for me, but the sloppiest match on the show, I thought, by considerable margin.
I liked a lot of what they were trying to do because it seemed like they were like given, okay, let's just try to go crazy. definitely want some tighten up in a lot of spots, but I came away just more kind of like thinking, like kind of spider webbing, like what could happen with like this woman rather than like the match as a whole, like you said, because obviously like it was never in doubt. I like Windsor a lot. I think there's a lot there. She provides a lot of she hits hard. She's stiff. She's my cup of tea. So she's already like up there in my book of somebody I want to see predominantly pushed. Obviously, like I would love to see what her and Jamie Hayter look like as like a feud or even as a tag team in this potential tag team tournament for women. Persephone, really, I was actually really impressed with her. Obviously, she's kind of like been in the AEW sphere a couple times they had referenced. But I thought she looked very interesting as a prospect, and she had Bozilla not been there, she would have definitely thrown a lot of women around. But I wonder if they went in and said, Mone's going to win, but like, was this kind of like the Bozilla show? And it kind of was. I've thrown my hands up. I don't have time to watch Stardom, but however, I might have to tell my wife, hey, got to sign up for this extra subscription now because I got to watch Bozilla. And apparently there's Bozilla versus Megan Bayne. I'm definitely going to be watching that at some point this week. I loved her kind of like Vader presentation when she made the entrance, and Danielson did a phenomenal job of putting her. I cannot stress that enough, folks. Our audio listeners, Bryan Danielson, like the Hall of Famer Bryan Danielson, did so much putting this 21-year-old over, who's only been wrestling for 3 months, roughly, right?
I think,
yeah. So she is literally a wrestling baby. She's a fetus. And it was funny how Danielson would reference that, and she did kind of like the Vader like slam in the corner, and then she literally did the Vader salt, which I was like, oh my god, how are you going to be able to do this? And she did it with no problem, of course. But there's a lot of potential there. I mean, obviously, I've not been into what the reporting is for Fightful, PW Insider, or even Wade. I would not be shocked at all if we hear something come out in the next week that apparently Nick Khan or somebody's trying to blow up her phone and get her tied to a contract, because Bozilla is exactly what WWE would want in a person.
For sure.
If I'm her, I'm getting an agent tomorrow and like starting like, hey, if you want to have these talks, like let's let's circle back to this in about a year. I feel like give her a full year in Stardom and let's revisit this, see where she's at this situation come next year. And like you said, maybe there's opportunities where, if you're doing these battle royals or maybe multi-person matches, like even if it's for like the 0 hours, let's get Persephone and Bozilla more prominent on these roles. Not that I'm advocating for them to take other spots, but like if they're going to be kind of like, annual fixtures, like let's get them a little bit more familiar. But again, I cannot stress enough, the Walker and Danielson did a phenomenal job putting everybody over, like from the New Japan side and Stardom side all night.
Before we move on, I want to get just quick thoughts here. The nine belts Mone stuff. Where do you land on the belt collector gimmick, especially as it pertains specifically to Mercedes?
Look, I find it very funny that I always, Brandon, I always get yelled at to say I don't have fun, just because for my disposition on wrestling, AEW, New Japan, traditional ROH, that's more my taste than WWE. However, there are some times where even I am sports entertained. So just the fact that she has this new creative way on how she's going to come out in 9 belts every cycle is really fun. How she did the cheerleaders at All In. She did the London like Royal Guard with belts. Very funny. She won another belt this weekend, and I can't stress enough that I believe she wrestled literally 4 times in 4 days. That kind of shows how much, if she's not in the running for wrestler of the year, then I think a lot of voters have lost the plot. I don't care what organization it is, she needs to be like top 4 in every like segment that's going to go. So that's kind of incredible. I don't mind it. I think it's quite funny. Obviously, there's a reason why a lot of companies are latching onto her because, like, why not? She's a mogul.
If they can get her to work, yeah.
She's a mogul. I mean, she's obviously living her best life with her best wrestler / lawyer boyfriend, spouse, whatever their situation is. That's kind of fun. But where I'm at with money, and I don't know, you were obviously busy, but I saw this pop up in large conversations kind of like through the X timeline. There needs to be kind of like a separation of the mid, like one of these titles between Athena, Mone, Storm, because I feel like Mone has all the belts, which is great, but then it's like, okay, we don't have the tag belts yet. So what's our next step with Monet? Who's going to be that person to dethrone her? Because I just assumed all along it was going to be Athena. That's what I thought. It was going to be Athena all along. And it's quite clear that I believe it's sometime next month or maybe in October. They're going to push Monet over the Jade Cargill line for the streak for the TBS title. I would just love to start seeing some cracks or some seeds planted to see who's going to be the one to finally dethrone Monet for the TBS title. Is it Statlander? Is it Windsor? Willow? I'm really open to anybody really at this point. I mean, I just felt like the closest that we've had. Well, no, those Statlander matches from last year were actually pretty freaking great. But just from this year, I think the only person that had a maybe plausible chance of beating Monet was only Harley Cameron, I think. Yeah, and like because like and a lot of people wanted Harley Cameron to win.
Yeah.
Just to see what kind of happens because she was kind of hot at the moment. So they got to make a decision at some point on who's gonna beat her. And I know like there's this like ongoing silly discussion that Monet has creative control and she doesn't want to lose, blah blah blah. Which I guess we can talk about that later. I just feel like I think we alluded it in our broader conversation with Sean later. There's not really that person that you want to like if she's going to have the belt for 1,000 days, how do you transfer that power to? Because like you said, you brought up the Roman Reigns that went to Cody, which I mean, you look at Cody now, right? So who does this TBS 1,000 day dust transfer to that's going to elevate to the next level?
And how do you capitalize on it?
Yeah, how do you capitalize it too?
Yeah, how do you not make that be a disappointment?
Yeah, I think it's like easy. It's easy for us to have this broader conversation now, but it's harder to put in practice and principle, I believe.
Yeah. My one concern with the belt collector gimmick is. And I get that the promotions that she's winning these titles in don't necessarily care all that much because, this is the most exposure that they're ever going to get, even if it's relatively minimal. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're not being mentioned directly. You're just seeing Monet come to the ring with those titles. But on a broader scale, at some point, wrestlers lose their titles, promotions need their belts back. Monet isn't going to be available to them. And so Monet has to lose. And when she's as big of a star as she is, she needs to lose 9 titles. That's 9 losses that they have to acknowledge them because, I mean, if she just suddenly stops calling herself that and she stops carrying the titles, well, then people can connect the dots and realize that she lost them somewhere along the way. So it's a slippery slope. It's great when you're on top and you're carrying all these belts and it's aesthetically pleasing to have a star in your company carrying all these championships. But on the flip side, it does do some harm, whether intentionally or not, when she eventually loses them and loses them to wrestlers who are not on the big stage. They're indie workers. They're indie workers working indie promotions. So I think that there is a drawback to the gimmick, but the presentation as a whole doesn't necessarily bother me. All right, match number 4. This was for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Zack Sabre Jr. defending the title against Nigel McGuinness, who had Daniel Garcia in his corner. Zack Sabre Jr., the winner here in 17 minutes, retaining the title. Again, another good match that never felt like the outcome was ever in doubt. I really appreciated the pacing of this versus the rest of the card. I'm always glad and excited to see Zack Sabre Jr. on an AEW card. I just think he brings such a different flair to the product and wrestles such a dramatically different style that feels like a breath of fresh air on shows that can, feel fairly monotonous in terms of pacing and style oftentimes. Nigel was really good too. I mean, Nigel, I think that all of Nigel's return matches since coming out of retirement have been above average. He's done good work in all of them. I think obviously having him wrestle in front of a crowd in London is a burgeoning factor. I think it aids them significantly in the presentation. He of course, Nigel McGuinness has reverence over in the States, but when you bring it over to England, I think that is exacerbated pretty significantly in a good way. The thing that struck me the most in this match was nothing about the match itself, but rather what I perceived as the demotion of the IWGP World title, in the sense that this was very, very clearly presented as a mid-card match, an afterthought, so to speak. And Nigel McGuinness, being at this stage of his career, a part-time at best wrestler. I don't even know that you would label him a part-time wrestler, but rather a special attraction, a rare occasion wrestler. For him to, and I know that he earned the title shot, but for him to earn an IWGP World title shot feels a little beneath that title at this point. And I think having it at its place on the show amidst what else was on this show, really, it felt to me a lot like how I always felt about Ring of Honor title defenses on Wrestle Kingdom shows. In that it was very clearly, the Ring of Honor title was very clearly undercard.
Right.
And the IWGP title here felt undercard.
Now, did this feel more undercard than Jack Perry versus Sonata? I felt that was extremely undercard.
Yeah, maybe that would have. I think the hang up for me is probably Nigel being as rare of a competitor as he is. It felt again like a special attraction versus a big title match.
Can I shock you, Brandon? I thought they kind of got me a little bit, because I actually loved that video package they did with Johnny Saint with Nigel. I thought it was good. I looked at it and I said, you know what? Are they actually gonna, because New Japan is just in flux right now? Are they gonna just be like, sure, let Nigel have like a week, a month reign? Like, is it gonna really hurt it? Is it gonna hurt the business any worse than it already is? They kind of got me on that. I understand ZSJ is not everybody's cup of tea. I completely understand that, but I like you, I'm a fan. I've always been a fan of ZSJ. He just offers a different thing. And although like this was not AEW's like best show collectively, they still present the wrestling smorgasbord of like styles. So like if this is more of your jam, like I think you were gonna get fed really well on what you were looking for as far as a fan. The match went up, I believe, up until the world title match. This was actually the longest match on the card. It was like 17 minutes, I believe.
They held back. Yeah.
And I didn't mind the finish. Which I found fascinating is because it makes sense now because they did the angle at the end of the show. I really thought we were going to get the Garcia turn, because obviously they're teasing that, and that's what they're going to do. And
crowd thought it was coming too.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe that's something we're saving for Dynamite, or you know what, save it for like. I would almost like. People kind of complain to me, Brandon, that like to me, because obviously I cover Collision. I want important stuff to happen. If they wanted to save this for Collision, because Nigel is like obviously primary on Collision. I think I would do it there and just like bloody him up, because Garcia, unfortunate, because I guess Garcia is not really anybody on the face side I want to elevate at this point, because his trajectory, this direction as a face character stinks. And I don't know if it's him, the way they've presented him. It just like, and it sucks because I love Daniel Garcia in this, the C2. He absolutely rocks. But just like everything after the TNT title run that kind of was like a wet fart, it just hasn't resonated at all. And I feel like there's so much more, so much there. And I thought there's an interesting story that it could tell with Garcia retiring Nigel and maybe Danielson being on commentary, and that's how you kind of rekindle Danielson versus Garcia one more time.
Yeah,
and you just have Garcia just really embrace Red Death again. Just because you got to get him away from. I love Matt Menard. I love 2.0, but I think you got to get him away from the silliness. He just needs to be that traditional. I'm trying to think how he just needs to go in there and kill people. Like you make him Red Death.
Yeah, it's a balancing act with him because there's such a serious undertone to his in-ring work, and yet when you make it all serious, there's a lack of personality there, and I think that they've really struggled trying to strike a good balance with that character. They've gone too far in the other direction with him becoming a bit of a comedy figure. The chat pushing back a little bit, only in the sense that Garcia has turned a lot. People are referencing the Big Show, for example. I don't think it's gotten that bad, but I do acknowledge that there is a wishy-washy nature to the presentation of Daniel Garcia. And I think a lot of that is just because they don't really know where to go with that character. They know there's talent there. They know that there's something that they want to tap into. They just haven't found the right way to do it yet.
Yeah. I mean, they re-signed him for a reason.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was like that potential like conversation when people were talking about killers versus pillars, and he was on the killer side that they like a lot of people were kind of talking about. And I think there's a lot there. It's unfortunate that Jericho. I still feel like there could be an interesting story if Jericho were to come back. If he is leveraging AEW forever, like I would love to have him and Jericho feud. I think there could be something interesting there as well. But
all right, so we'll continue on here. We got a backstage segment, which is very rare for an AEW pay-per-view. It was Queen Aminata and Thekla were brawling. They ended up brawling through a curtain and onto the stage. Fought down the aisle toward the ring, and then Sky Blue and Julia Hart showed up to help Thekla. They got a brief advantage, but Jamie Hayter's music hit, and she got a big ovation as she ran in for the save. And that was that. I don't think we have to talk too much about this one. I already talked about the fact that Hayter certainly seems poised for a push and could be in line to be one of those women that steps up here in the absence of some of the men at the top of the card. Anything that you feel we need to touch on there?
Well, my bad on the 0 hour. So basically what this was setting up. So basically Thekla and Aminata left their multi-person match and they beat the crap out of each other. So basically the premise and the idea is they've been beating each other up for about an hour. So that's, I did forget to mention that. That was my fault. I will say the position of the spider crawl and Tekla's reaction, very good. I actually like that a lot. The only thing the way the spacing of like the ramp and stage was so small, the camera couldn't really get the north facing of Hayter coming at you, like, which is unfortunate. But I mean, the reaction was crazy. I'm so glad that she is back. I mean, I don't. Did we? Can we? Was there any specific worries that maybe it could have been a concussion? We don't know. Like,
right.
I don't want to feel irresponsible trying to speculate, but I think some people were trying to imply that. I don't know, but regardless, I'm glad she's back. She's a star.
You muted yourself. Brian, you cut out there you were muted and then you came back and then you went silent.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
My fault, audio listeners and visual. But yeah, let's get Hater back where she is, or needs to be at the forefront of being a star.
All right, match number 5. We've talked about this a little bit in the lead up, but the 3-way match for the AEW World Tag Team titles, Hurt Syndicate defending against FTR and Brodito. This one goes just over 16 minutes, and we have Brodito winning the AEW World Tag Team titles. Yeah, a bit of a surprise here. I think, as you and I kind of alluded to earlier, we both kind of pegged FTR as the possible winner here. I don't want to say that they completely gave it away, but Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin's saunter to the ring told me that they were losing the titles. I think if you've watched wrestling long enough, you can read body language well enough to know that this was not going to be their night. There was just a certain lack of bravado and swagger out of these two. It, of course, has been widely reported by a number of sources, reliable sources, that they have not been keen on the potential choices to dethrone them as World Tag Team Champions. That came to fruition here. It was pretty clear from the outset that they set this 3-way up so that the Hurt Syndicate did not need to take the pin, but AEW chose to take it a step further. Not only did Lashley and Benjamin not take the pin, but they were incapacitated at the end of the match to turn it into a standard 2-on-2 between Brodito and FTR. So Lashley and Benjamin protected as much as humanly possible here in their dropping of the AEW tag team titles. They were incapacitated, of course, by Ricochet and Gates of Agony. I want to give a special shout out to Bryan Danielson because he, again, was fantastic on commentary here, laying out exactly why Ricochet and Gates of Agony might get involved and pointing out that, hey, Ricochet and Gates of Agony have been seen hanging out with MJF, and MJF has a problem with the Hurt Syndicate now. So they did a good job explaining that in commentary. I was very happy for that, because AEW so often will let those pieces and connections kind of hang there in the air without having a commentator draw the connection, which they should, because they're sitting at the desk, they're calling the action, they're informing the audience, and they're supposed to know what's going on. So it made sense that Danielson would call that connection out, and I was very, very happy with that. I liked the most of the action here, but Brian, my big issue, and we've kind of alluded to this throughout, convoluted overbooking in the closing sequences of these matches, and it was particularly egregious here. The camera first misses a near fall in the ring when it's trying to catch Ricochet unmasking himself. So they miss a near fall between FTR and Brodito in the ring to catch the Ricochet reveal, and then all 4 wrestlers are in the ring. They seem a little bit confused. Cash. So it's Dax Harwood taking the pin, but Cash is sort of leaping in to make the save, and I'm guessing Brody King was supposed to pull him back, but he didn't. And so what we wound up with was Cash Wheeler just kind of watching his partner get pinned. And then
the referee kind of looked like an idiot too.
Yes. The ref was out of position, didn't count it first, then brought the hand down for the 3 because he got confused about the lack of save. So it just got really messy in the closing moments, and I thought it hurt and hampered what was otherwise a pretty good match.
I would even argue I'll say this might have been Hurt Syndicate's best match. I think just because they looked, the crowd went banana for Lashley and King once they started going in there.
Oh, when they first came out and rounded the corner and just started killing dudes,
yeah, that was great. And then they finally met in the middle, like King Kong versus Godzilla, like whatever monster variation or Power Rangers Zord that you can think of, just bashing each other. It was like fantastic.
Brody and Bobby was a great.
Moment. Yeah, and Shelton looked like a killer too. Like I could not stress enough how Shelton Benjamin, I believe, is 49 years old, and just looking like a freak. Like the way he's able to like elevate and with the knee and his, I want to say it's not his thrust kick, his mega buster kick, because he like powers up to use it, is incredible. Not a lot from FTR, which is fine. I think they kind of played their role very well. I think obviously they're on the bigger, better things and All Out, which is completely fine. And like you said, I wonder, because if you go back and how the Brodito beat the Bucks, so King actually held one of the Jacksons back of the initial when they beat the Young Bucks. So like you said, I think that was supposed to be the spot. Now, was King out of place? Did he have a brain fart?
Right.
I don't like, I would like to think he was not out of whack because of the shaved chair shot, but like, I mean, like Sean said, let's not do that. But
yeah,
like, I think there's probably a miscommunication there. And then it's like, now if the spot Bandito, if he actually nails it like he does, I think that probably alleviates some confusion. But like, it was like a whole, like everything exploded at the same time. Brodito didn't land the monkey flip right. Cash looked like an idiot. The official looked dumb. Did Brody King forget a spot? It was just all over this place. And then the way they, obviously the missed spot with Ricochet and his crew now feuding with the Hurt Syndicate. I thought it was also kind of telling. I mean, I have not read any reporting today. If it's out there, I don't know. I thought it was even more telling MVP was not out there.
Yeah.
I thought that was a huge red alert. We've got a title change but I just assumed it was FTR.
Beyond that, I also wondered if it had anything to do with MVP's legal history. I wasn't sure if there would be an issue visa wise with him getting into England. That was the first thing that struck me. But maybe he's totally cleared. I don't know. I mean, there's plausible deniability either way. It could have been that, but it also could have been the situation that there's a disgruntled employee, essentially. I mean, we know that there's stuff going on in that respect.
I know we're running long, Brandon, but should we? Yeah. So I've met all three gentlemen. They seem really, really nice. MVP as a person to kind of sit back and listen to. His podcast is interesting to me. He's a fascinating individual to listen to and discuss about the business. What is the problem here? I want to understand is it a them problem, an FTR problem? Which is a shame because we're, for the most part, whatever the problem is, I think it's now finally getting out. But these stories have passed. If there was any scuttlebutt, it would have gotten blown up by somebody right away. But it's now just becoming a thing. It's obviously been a thing for a little bit, and others, Wade, Dave, and others have mentioned it. I don't know what the problem is. I don't like this systemic thing where it's it's like these old WWE guys. I don't think it's there. I mean, I want to say AEW now is picking people that are not going to be the Miros, the Malachi Blacks, Andrades, who don't want to lose. I don't think there's a perception of Hurt Syndicate don't want to lose. Everything I've heard, they were open to lose. They were open to lose the Outrunners of all people. So don't tell me they don't want to do business. So I'm just trying to understand where is the problem? Where is this stemming from?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a pattern now with talent, and it happens to largely be former WWE talent in the sense that we have precedent for them doing business in WWE. I mean, certainly Miro, Rusev, Aleister Black, these are guys who lost on the regular. I mean, Shelton Benjamin was a glorified jobber for much of his time in WWE. Yeah. These are guys who never had an issue laying down on that side of things. So it starts to become a situation where you have to ask, is there's obviously a certain sentiment of inmates running the asylum in AEW. I think that's been present since day one. You have to wonder if wrestlers, especially those that have star power from elsewhere, feel comfortable putting their foot down with Tony Khan because they know he's not going to push back. And I don't know,
Mm.
because it is odd. There, when there's smoke, there's fire, and you can't tell me that, you know, a wrestler like Malachi Black, who was brought into AEW with much fanfare and then largely just disappeared from television with no explicable reason other than what we had heard, which is, hey, he won't do the job. But then why is he completely fine to do it in WWE?
Yeah, I mean, Malachi Black's losing to R-Truth of all people.
Right.
So
it's an odd situation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's continue on here. We get the AEW Unified Championship match next. It is contested under Continental rules, meaning no Prince Nana at ringside for this. Technically, no Don Callis, although he was on commentary for this to get around that restriction. Kazuchika Okada, your winner in just under 17 minutes to retain the unified title. Again, I thought this was a good match and a fairly surprising clean finish. Swerve is not a guy who takes a lot of clean losses in undercard matches, so to speak. Right. But again, this just felt to me like another one of those deals where Okada is not hitting that third or fourth gear. And I'll reference Sean, who we had on the show earlier. And Sean, I think you're still in the chat. Sean, someone who has not seen Kazuchika Okada in New Japan and has relied entirely on what he's seen in AEW. And I continue to pound the table on this, on these AEW post shows. If you are somebody who has come into Kazuchika Okada only through what you've seen in AEW, man, the conjecture around him does not match the output.
Yep.
At all. This is a guy who looks closer to WWE Shinsuke Nakamura than he does the killer Kazuchika Okada from New Japan. It's just not there. And he's having good matches. I think that the gimmick can at times be entertaining even if it is a little too hokey and comedic for my liking, given what we know Okada is capable of. But the further we get into this run, the further it feels to me as though Okada is just here to work a schedule that's a little bit easier on his body and have some fun. And there just isn't that much else there.
I will say I like the Okada discourse is it's a sticky situation because, like you said, if this is your only presentation of Okada, then that's what you're going to go by. It's completely understandable. I will say now at Double or Nothing, I'll tell you what, Brandon, that Mike Bailey match that Okada had, that kind of like gave me the reassurance that I felt, okay, it's still in there. Like that's why I felt pretty good going into the Omega match, but then like I don't know. I was probably a little down on the Mega Okada match at All In. I'll be honest. Obviously it was great, but I didn't have realistic expectations for that match either because everybody thought it was going to just be this classic. And I was like, guys, let's calm it down a little bit. But I think
a decade removed from
that they're not the same people anymore. I completely let's have a sensible conversation. The gear stuff I think is a pretty reasonable conversation as well. I think he's a little bit better than Shinsuke.
I do
personally, like I said, after seeing that Mike Bailey match at Double or Nothing, that gave me all the reassurance in the world that it's still in there. Like you said, he's pretty picky. Obviously that match he had with Ospreay was pretty freaking good. So it's there. Is it more of a thing where it's harder for Okada to be Okada as in this heel universe with Don Callis? Maybe, but then like how often is Okada willing to be Okada on like Dynamite and Collision? Because like you said, working these easier schedules. I don't know. I want to see a little bit more depth to Okada because like other than him just cackling and yelling bitch at everybody, that was kind of fun when he first came out, but like we don't have anything else. Like He can obviously cut a promo in English. He's capable of doing it. I'd like to see him talk a little bit more. I will say, if you go back, their match. Okada and Swerve had a match in Dynamite that was, I'll say, not good. This was so much better. Like, I was kind of like worried about the quality of how it was going to look. This was for a mid-card title match that didn't have a lot of help. This exceeded my expectations. I thought Swerve, again, did Swerve things. Looks like a superstar, even with the bum knee. I love the Mr. Terrific gear. Keep doing that, Swerve. Like, I love that. Very creative. And like you said, clean finish. To me, I like this match. I don't know. I'll say it. I like this match better than the Okada Omega match at All In, because obviously it was half the time and you got the same result. And like I said, I'll say it again. I'm so much more enamored. I feel like you can find a good result in a 15 to 18-minute match rather than these 35-minute bangers. I think we can kind of get past that, but I really like that. Obviously, the post-match, what we kind of alluded to earlier, very interesting with just the random Wardlow cameo. A lot of people said, it was like, oh my God, is that Killer Cross? And that would have, I mean, if they wanted to be the talking point of the weekend, that would have been something for sure. But you know what? Like, Swerve is one for a challenge. We'll see if Swerve can make something. It is kind of unfortunate. Like, okay, if Swerve's like, what is Swerve's direction when he's come? To me, it seems like he's destined to kind of feud with the Don Callis family, which is like, I kind of feel like it's a little beneath Swerve. Like, I mean, especially by the time he comes back, is at that point, are we into an MJF title run? Like, is he potentially the babyface that could be projected against MJF? Because obviously they teased that a while back and they haven't gone to it, which, I mean, it's still there if they would like it to be. So it'll be interesting to see what they want to do with Swerve when he comes back. Again, if the projection time for a torn meniscus is anywhere from 3 to 6 months, like, he's been on the grind. If he's been on that wheel for 2019, give him as much time as he needs. And then the funny thing in wrestling too, the heart, everybody will still chant it, whose house, and he'll get a huge reaction when he comes back.
Yeah, definitely. They have when the AEW roster is fully healthy, they have an embarrassment of riches. So much so that at times it's very hard for them to, I think, book competently, because there's just so many guys that feel like they need to be at the top, and right now they're going to be without a lot of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they move forward. All right, let's get to our last match here for us to discuss the AEW Women's World Championship match. For those who are coming in late, we have already discussed the main event as well as the men's world title match. So you can go back to the beginning of the show on demand if you want to hear our thoughts on those two. So we'll close out with Toni Storm and Athena for the aforementioned Women's World Championship. Toni Storm, your winner in just over 15 minutes. Brian, we kind of alluded to this. You were talking about 35-minute bangers and whatnot a couple of moments ago, and I wanted to highlight up until this point, we had not had up until the men's world title match, we did not have a match over 20 minutes on this card. Which, kudos to AEW on that. I mean, this was still a long show. Don't get me wrong, but it did not overstay its welcome, and they have overstayed their welcome so many times. So many times. So kudos to them on the pacing of this. I thought it was much improved over what we're used to seeing. So Storm, your winner here, just over 15 minutes. The finish comes when Athena goes for a second O-face of the match, but Storm blocks it. She turns Athena into a crossface chicken wing, which she had used several times throughout the course of the match. She wrapped the legs and Athena tapped. I thought, we talked about this a little bit already, Brian. I thought that they did a good job building Athena into a credible challenger, but not a credible threat to actually take the title from Toni, given her position, versus Athena's relative lack of involvement on main roster TV. She has been largely relegated to Ring of Honor for the majority of her time with the company. As I said in my report for PWTorch.com, I'm still sort of shocked that it took this long to get to this point. When the AEW women's division was suffering through its doldrums, they had Athena over there on Ring of Honor, and they just chose not to use her for whatever reason. It's not something that I understand. But in any case, I would like to see Athena become full-time on the AEW side of things. I think the roster can use her. I think she's very talented. I just don't see any drawback to having your top-end talent available to you on the main card and putting a little less focus on what, quite frankly, is a dead brand in Ring of Honor. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. I think like the last match that we talked about, they didn't necessarily hit like a fourth gear here.
Yes.
But I go back and forth between considering that a criticism and a slight positive. And I say that because so often with these AEW pay-per-views, I've talked about this in detail on these post shows before. It feels like the producers don't talk. It feels like there is often spots that are repeated match to match because producers have not talked to each other and said, hey, we're doing this in our match. Don't copy that. Don't repeat that. And you'll see sort of a theme of the night develop where multiple matches have the same spots or the same moves or the same little wrinkle happening. And they did a better job than usual with All In last month. I thought they did an even better job tonight between not overstaying their welcome with these matches and also presenting matches that felt singular. They didn't feel like an amalgamation of the three matches you saw prior to this one. So I thought that they did a good job there overall. Certainly didn't have this ranked as highly as I did Storm and Mone last month, but I thought it was good.
Yeah, no, I feel like we haven't really talked about that. With a 9-card show that, you know, generally on the Collision Cafe, myself and Amina Jenny will always kind of groan and say, like, we always joke, if you could, I feel like if you could combine the, like, how Tony Khan wants to, like, book for the fans and the way he wants to take chances and blah, 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 and then kind of combine it with Paul Levesque's boring sensibilities of wanting to book a wrestling card, you could probably create a pretty good, like, booker, which kind of, because to me, I feel like personally 7 matches, I feel like that's a nice little sweet spot, especially if these matches are going to go long. However, like, I mean, we'd have to go and look at the kind of do the math, calc and trig. That, you know, there was only 2 matches that went over 20 minutes on this entire card, which to me is kind of a triumph, like you had mentioned. I believe I want to say, I can't remember what outlet. I don't know if it was us or if it was Brian Alvarez that mentioned. It sounds like AEW is having like daily post production shows now, which I guess in the past they were not. So I don't know if we can kind of champion that. I mean, obviously the vibes around the company are really good now. So like that could obviously like help into that. And maybe like also like the less voices in the room, like Tony Khan's mentioned as well, as far as like booking, I'm sure that's taking some like that's helping as well. You know, Christopher Daniels, he's obviously a guy back there. Who was the fellow that God, my WCW brain's not working right now. Who was the WCW fella who would wrestle like Sub-Zero? I believe he, God, help us out, chat. He's the WCW. But apparently he's out and about as a producer coach now, maybe as well. Dustin Rhodes, obviously he's shout out Speedy Recovery. He's obviously like a big guy for the women, producing the matches as well. So that was very refreshing on the card. I thought it was actually kind of fascinating to a degree, because a lot of the times, like, you'll have your Ospreys unload the clip and they'll just like go hog wild and then they'll like be like, well, we have to do it again. I felt like they chose not to hit another gear on purpose. Maybe I'm like reading too much and I'm trying to just like interpret on the pacing of how they laid out this match. I felt like they kind of hit a third gear, but there's definitely another gear and a half they can hit on this match. And I really like the finish. I like how Toni Storm adapts another finish. Well, she's won matches with the big package, the Storm Zero, and like the chicken wing. I think that's a very good nuanced thing. Kind of like Hangman can win on different ways now as well. The way she countered the finish, the crowd went nuts. I would have liked. Did they? I might have tuned out and missed it, but did it really hit home that Toni Storm's never won in London before in AEW? Did they really touch on that? They that missed opportunity there because that's probably if they would have maybe peppered that in, maybe that could have given you just like that umpteen. Like give us 5%. That's all we really need. But I like the finish though.
I enjoyed the match. Definitely left some stuff on some meat on the bone, and I think that's largely twofold. One, I think like you alluded to, Brian, there might have been conversations about pacing these shows a little bit better, and if they are having those conversations, that is fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, keep having those conversations. Even though I didn't think this was the strongest card from a build and overall in-ring perspective, I was very appreciative and very much attuned to the fact that there were key noticeable changes in the production layout of the show. Be it the shorter undercard matches, the pacing throughout the show, building to your major spots, saving some of the more violent stuff for your two main events, and also just getting out in 4 hours or however long it was, rather than just overstaying your welcome. So kudos to the company as a whole on that. I really hope that this is a path they continue to go down. Brian, I want to just kind of get a quick thumbs up, thumbs down here as we close out. But first, I will throw up the graphic on the screen for those who are still with us on video. And I'll read a little bit here for those of you listening on demand in audio format. But now, always a great time. But now, as we head into the fall season, a lot of people are going to be spending a lot more time on football, for example, and might not have as much time to dedicate to live pro wrestling shows. So it's an awesome time to become a VIP member if you aren't one already. PWTorch.com/GoVIP is the easiest way to do that. It gives you a whole host of incredible stuff, ad-free podcasts, VIP-only shows, 35 years of the podcast and newsletter archive, so you can follow major events happening as they happened in real time. Really cool way to get great perspective on that. You get a weekly PDF newsletter, back issues, the whole 9 yards there. Of course, an ad-free version of the site, which is a huge plus. Just laying out here a few of the shows. You get the Fix with Top Martin, the post-event roundtable podcast, which Wade and crew, I'm sure, recorded while we were live on the air here. By the time you sign off with us, that'll probably be available for you on demand. Greg Parks Out Loud, frequent co-host of this show with me and former host of Wrestling Night in America, reads his Parks' Take column out loud for in audio format for VIP listeners. And then, of course, the Wade Keller Hotlines and Everything with Rich Fan. Just so many great shows, and I only mentioned a few of them. Brian, I want to throw to you. Talk about what you do for the Torch on the regular and the VIP side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So weekly, I am doing the hits and misses column for Collision. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but I've been kind of like a Collision. I don't want to say day oneer, but Wade's put me on Collision for a while, and I feel like I try to really look and analyze the stuff on Collision. I enjoy it because sometimes it's a challenge. I know everybody doesn't watch Collision or want to have time for Collision.
Sure.
I feel like this year specifically, there's been some good movement on the show, making it more important. I think obviously like the Toni Storm stuff has helped tremendously. The C2 on Collision is always a great time. But yeah, that's writing. We'll have some occasional stuff. Had a chance to talk to Tony Khan on the media call. Wade was so kind enough to post that in writing form for us earlier this week. That's still there. He talked about some interesting things and just about like leadership, vibes on the company, things like that. And then obviously the flagship, myself and Amina Jenny, the Collision Cafe. We'll normally talk about AEW, talk about the Collision show, but we'll have some wrestling conversations. The past couple of weeks we've talked about the Brock Lesnar stuff and kind of opened up our palette a little bit about more serious conversations. We talked about the monopolization of WWE and how that affects AEW. So we tried to kind of like broaden our conversations, but just, have kind of like more open conversations because, Brandon, unfortunately in this space, like a lot of people aren't really asking, like everybody wants to overtalk each other and have a lot of voice, but Amanda and I, we really try to do a good job of like asking each other, like, how does this situation feel? Or not necessarily like poo-poo everything, like, but objectively ask, okay, this is bad, but what can we do to fix it? Like, we always try to like evaluate a problem on, okay, this obviously is not good, but what can we do to fix it? And I feel like when we throw stuff out there, I feel like sometimes it shows on screen, and it like, not that we are going to make a difference on AEW booking a product, but I feel like when we're having those broader conversations that we can see a tweak, like you had smartly pointed out, like the production, I feel like not we've complained, but like, I think it's been an obvious kind of issue for a while. And it's just like, it's satisfying just to kind of see that, happen.
Yeah. Perfect. Brian, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle on Forbidden Door.
Up for sure. Like, again, I think like moderately my expectations like were kind of like a 6.5. I think I would go a solid 7.5 to maybe an 8 question mark. I want to go back and watch it, but for sure, I think anywhere I'm about at 7.5 to 8 right now.
Yeah, I'm a mild thumbs up on this. I think that the convoluted finishes in a batch of the matches, like we talked about, knocks this down a peg. But I was so pleased with, as you alluded to, Brian, that the evolution of production and presentation here, as opposed to what we're used to seeing with AEW, that I'd be remiss if I didn't give them significant amounts of credit for that. And I think that alone, so coupled with, the wrestling is always good on AEW pay-per-views. That's something that just kind of goes unspoken. You know that the wrestling is going to be good. It's everything else that often suffers and leads to lower scores from me and others on this show. So the production tweaks were encouraging enough to sort of guarantee on my end a thumbs up. But generally speaking, generally I'm lower on the concept of Forbidden Door in general, and I think that sort of prevents me from being super high on this show, because I do prefer that they would get, that they would focus primarily just on the straight storytelling. Sure. But I thought this was one of the better iterations, given how it was pulled off and the progression from match to match. So mild thumbs up for me. Brian, thanks so much for joining me here on the show. It was a lot of fun. I know we went long, but there was plenty to talk about on this thing. Sure. And also the fact that it wasn't getting done at 12:30, 1 o'clock Eastern time was a significant help in allowing us to expand a little bit more on thoughts. So sure. Thanks to AEW for that, although it was just sort of a coincidence being in London and all for this one. But I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about it long form. Anything else you wanted to throw out there here before we sign off?
Yeah, we know Tony Khan's a listener of PWTorch and subscriber, because we did have a Torch talk on during the media call, Tony. So if you want to move all out to the afternoon on Saturday, we're not gonna hate it, because I believe WrestlePalooza has already been announced. Well, announced quotations for our audio listeners with my fingers. 6 Central, 7 Eastern. That's what the poster says. So if all out, if you want to move that to 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just saying.
Well, if he's listening, maybe we'll see. Anyway, thanks so much again, Brian, for joining me. It was a lot of fun. Thanks so much to all of our VIP members in the chat and Sean for hopping on
Thanks, Sean.
here and talking with us. It's been a fun one. Until next time, for Brian, I'm Brandon LeClair. We'll see you next time on Wrestling Night in America.